are here tonight, and then John Husband.
So I know, are you talking like?
You know, Mr. Whalen and Mr.
No.
Becker, you know.
Basically, yeah.
Okay, thanks. I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting tonight, and especially Shannon. Glad to have you with us. She's the new building clerk for the city. I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome everybody again, and we will now do roll call. Kyle Williams.
Here.
John Whalen.
Here.
David Weiss.
Here.
Randy Pott. Here. Harold Hamilton. Present. John Hambacker.
Here.
And Cameron Dennis here. Okay, get a chance to look at the March 13th minutes. Take a look at them real quick if you haven't already seen them. Okay. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded that the minutes of March 13th be approved. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Okay, could we have reports on the utility billing and payments and the changes in the office?
Oh, go ahead, Shannon.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna let Shannon take the lead on this, so.
I was gonna say, we have given everybody the ability to have their bills emailed to them now. So I have gotten a lot of requests for that, so we can print less bills that way, yes, yes.
Anything else with changes in the office?
I think that's it. Yeah, I didn't take the full numbers this time. My apologies about, how many are paying online and those types of things, but, we've been kind of watching that, how many folks are converting to paying in different ways. I just don't have those numbers for this month, so, just so that we can see and monitor what's going on, and which methods seem to work best for folks. We're hopeful that the, emailing the bills will be a popular, service, so that we can cut down on how many we're printing and stuffing in envelopes everywhere.
Are you making like attempts to catch the big numbers in gallons and?
Oh, yes.
Okay, still
Yes.
doing that, okay.
Yeah, we are doing it. We do that every month. It's just with the changes and different people doing different pieces, it's a constant thing that I'm watching. So part of that too, I think last time when we met, it's been so long ago at this point, I had mentioned that we had a lady from Encode in training, with staff, so that was immediately prior to Shannon coming on board with us. And so with that, we also changed up how we were doing a few things when we had that lady here. So that's also kind of as we get used to new processes. That's something that's a little bit of growing pain, so we get that down pat. We're actually gonna have that lady come back and spend a few days with Shannon next week, one-on-one, to help her get her feet under her a little better. We started Shannon on the front end, taking payments so that she would understand that piece of it when she started moving in the building. So, like I said, that'll be next week when we have, Lori Scroggs back with Encode. So that's, so the billing part itself, so we're continuing to triage that. I do think, prior to Steve coming on board with us, I know when Chief Chase was serving as interim public works director, he did give a few updates about, gateways and different pieces of our AMI system. And so we have gateways ordered, but they were 7 months out from the time we ordered them. So it's like so many things today, it's not a quick turnaround to get them in hand. And so he had our electric superintendent working on kind of reworking some of those gateways that were down. So gateways are part of that communication system, the AMI system. So your meters, how our system, really quick, okay, so you guys understand. Our meter reading system, water meters read up to electric meters, okay? They send their data to the electric meters. Those of you who are in areas that we don't serve electric, we have a separate subsystem that those water meters read straight to the LoRa system. system is what it's called. Please don't ask me what that acronym stands for, but anyway, then, so they either go to the electric meters or to the LoRa system. Then they go to different areas among the city that are called gateways, and that's a separate device. Think of it as a collection device, so, or a hub. So they go to that closest gateway, and I know Chief Chase had reported that we had several of those throughout town that were down at that time, and we were actually taking some of them apart and reworking some of the internal wiring in them, and getting a few of them up and going as we were waiting for those orders to come in. So then they go from the gateways, then they go to different repeaters. So, I'm not sure exactly how many repeaters we have throughout town. There's one on top of the water tower at Walmart. There's a few others around town in high places. And from those repeaters, then they shoot to the antenna that's at the back of the admin building. And that's then where it comes into our system. So it's a whole data collection network. Think of like several spider webs that all interconnect. And so if any piece of that is down, that starts causing us issues with pulling in reads from those meters. And so it can impacts water far more than it impacts electric. And so we are working each month trying to troubleshoot and trying to eliminate those problems. Part of it is until we get those orders in, we're kind of just in a waiting mode. Yes, Mr. Hammaker.
There was a comment that was made at one of the previous meetings about metal lids and the meters not being capable of having that information transferred. Has that been remedied, and how many metal lids are we concerned with?
So it's in process. Do you wanna?
I don't have that number with me right now. I can get it for you. What we do is they cut a hole into the metal lids, and the antenna, next grid antenna, sits on top, and the line runs down to the water meters. So
Why not replace that with a plastic lid like all the rest of them?
some of them are in areas where they get driven over, and lawnmowers running over them and different things. That's another problem we have with the next grid antennas getting hit, damaged. So we're having to work through it on a case-by-case basis, so.
Okay, so that would be an interesting piece of information for the next meeting as to, I mean, it sounded to me like there was a problem getting a number of readings, and therefore those people were not billed properly. And sometimes that billing went on for a couple of months before they were finally, and then that creates turmoil.
It does.
And anger.
It does. And frustration for us in the office. I mean, when we can't, we don't have a quick fix for it.
And one other question while you're on this, when it comes to, we folded envelopes until we were informed we shouldn't, or weren't allowed to do that. It would be interesting to know what percentage we've reduced the envelope stuffing process, because that's a long.
Well, none yet, because we just opened it up so folks could sign up for email bills.
Yes, I know, I heard that, but that would be an interesting piece of information as we move forward. What, are we getting to the 50% mark eventually after a couple of months, or do we just have a handful? And that takes a lot of time. I mean, when we were doing that, there were 3 of us there doing that, and we would spend 3-4 hours there, and they could be doing something far more important than stuffing envelopes.
Do we know the cause? I don't know how many people it affected, that some bills were astronomical.
So
Do we know the cause of that yet?
I can't say that we know all the causes. So again, these gateways being out in different pieces, part of what happens too when they're not communicating is other components in the system that relay that information, their batteries run down because they're constantly trying to connect and they can't. So as we're working through this, and we have NextGrid, who is our automated metering system, our communications provider, they're working with us. We're trying to identify right now how many of each different component we have on hand, and so they're working with us to try to figure out some solutions to help us out right now. But part of what happens is when it doesn't read for some time, what we've seen at least is that all of a sudden when it does pull a read, it's a catch-up read, and so it'll be the whole usage up to that time, and it'll show it all at once. And so that's part of what's going on. I won't say that's all of what's going on. I'm not that technician for that system, so I can't.
Because it sounds like some of them would be beyond catching up.
Gotcha, and I can't answer all those questions, I just.
And sometimes if they have to go manually read, it could be, cause then they have to be manually input into the system, it could have been a transposed number, it just could be various things.
When that system was purchased, what was the lifespan of the you're saying there's a battery in there to run the Doppler effect. I thought that was beyond the 10-year.
My understanding is the batteries for the next grid antennas are good for 10 years, so, but what happens is, if it's trying to loop and talk to the meter.
So it's gonna wear down faster.
And I have 25 more of those coming. I've got the meter tech. I've developed an investigation form for them to go out and troubleshoot these, so we can start better tracking what the fix has gotta be, what the fix might not, or isn't, starting to narrow down, because you've got a meter that could be an issue, you got an antenna that could be an issue, so it's a troubleshooting process for each individual one.
And what is the cost of a battery system to replace? I mean, if you've gotta replace a battery in there, what are we talking about? What kind of expense are we going to incur in the future?
I don't have that answer.
I cannot tell you, I believe it's $100 per antenna, so.
Wow.
Yeah, as we've walked through this, we're finding out that there were maybe some things that were recommended in the past that weren't implemented. And so we're playing catch up.
Any other questions from the committee?
Yeah, I have one other, I'm sorry, of asking these all, but when it came to the fire hydrants, well, I'm gonna go back to that issue because there were 70 that were not functioning. And I told you about my neighbor in the yellow house. They just came out there within 5 minutes, that was replaced. When I was talking with Jack years ago, the city had purchased a hydraulic device, I don't know what the name of it is, for being able to crank whatever bolts you have to crank in order to put in a new gasket. Is that, I mean, if we got 70 that are leaking, and we've had the comment many times by Mr. Nash that I don't have the manpower, we can't get to this, we're never gonna get this done, maybe not quite that acute, but it was pretty close to that kind of comment. If you have 70 of them leaking, and I go back to the house that burned because they couldn't get water to put that out, Mr. Martin's house.
That's not true.
They said they had to go turn on a
Correct.
meter somewhere, or some line, down line, and by that time the house had burned. Am I way off on this
So
comment,
I
or what?
talked to the fire chief, he said the trucks rolled out and showed up with water on the trucks. So they started fighting the fire, went over to work on the fire hydrant end of things, and then realized, okay, this is one that shut off at the valve. The water department showed up, police chief was on scene, they got it fired up, and they implemented the water from the fire hydrant.
So it was within minutes then that the
That was
water was
my
turned on?
understanding. So I think some of this stuff just,
Yeah, I know, there's always a rumor.
All
And I can-
of
One.
all of
I'd
the
like to-
hydrants there, sorry, Steve.
I'd like to answer the fire hydrant question. So we have tools, and there's an individual on the team that's trained and could go out and rebuild them. So let's say that's a proposed 2-hour time span. And he's not done one in a while because he's busy going sewer main to sewer main for leaks or whatnot. To put him out there, let's say it takes 3 hours. So you start breaking down this fire hydrant and working on it, and then you got a call about a sewer main over at, down below China King that's gonna take you 2 to 3 days to put it together. Mark Nash was not lying to anybody or fibbing. It is literally, we're doing what we can with what we have. And it's just, I think the route to go is, in the budget year coming, is to hire a contractor to come in and we wanna do a maintenance on all of the fire hydrants. That means lube, pop the cap, the bonnet off, take a look at it, make sure if it's leaking or not, and what seals it might need. So we got the log, we have a log that makes sure the log's very accurate. They'll all get painted, refurbished, put a reflective plate on it, tells you what the flow is on it, and so that the fire department can see them in nighttime conditions. So we'll do that refresh, maybe we'll go ahead and fund for, 4 or 5 of them to be rebuilt. And then we'll just work on that on the next 5-year CIP funding, and we'll make gains on it. So we have a plan, it's
All right,
just,
well, that brings up my last question, and that is, when you look at the water, percentage, which we are not billed for, we can get the data for water pump, and we can get the data for water billed for. Could that be a part of a meeting piece of data? Percentage of water loss? Because when we first started this many years ago, we were at the 40-some% loss in water that was never billed for. And I think that was tremendously high relative to most communities
Right.
around us.
And I mean, that is something that the water crew, cause I remember about the time that I started with the city, we were in that boat.
Right.
And so, and I know they've done tremendous work in cutting down on those. So the whole question about having the fire hydrant shut off, the point I wanted to make a second ago, cause it's all related. So the valves that turn those hydrants off are within 5-6 foot of each of the hydrants? So they're right there. They're not like they've gotta go track the line down 2 or 3 blocks down. They're within 5 or 6 foot of that hydrant. So they're right there. And so part of that reducing that water loss was shutting off those hydrants that were leaking. And so that was a big piece. So that was done as an effort to conserve that water.
Okay. Well, I guess that eases my mind, because I think the rumor that was going around was definitely that house burnt because they couldn't get water to it fast
Right.
enough.
Right, and I've heard and seen that rumor as well. You may have to come up front so Catherine can see.
Yeah,
that.
I understand. I'm sure.
As a committee member.
Yeah, I'm behind everybody. I was gonna just add something. I remember, because we were talking about this before, how much water loss, like that's been recurring since I was the chairperson of the committee and stuff. I remember Josh at one point stating that we had come down from 40 a few years ago to around 18 to 15.
Oh, I don't think it was ever that low.
It was, I remember him stating that before.
Really?
Yeah, and the average for, like, the average for the nation is around 15%.
Okay.
That's typically what you see in other municipalities.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Hanbacker?
No, thank you. Sorry.
Okay, anything else, city administrator?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, let's go on to item B.
Okay, so I just wanted to bring this back up again as just a reminder. So the Surge Line Protection Program, this is in your packet. This flyer, this is something that's been through the committee recommended to the board approved. This is the bill protection piece. So flyers will actually be going out in the next utility bill with this information of cost per month. This is the opt-out program. So it will automatically be added to everyone's bill, and if they don't want it, they need to call, and it's not, don't call the utility office, okay? Call the number that's on the flyer, that 844 number, and opt out. Now, I know there's been, anyway, as with everything, the rumor mill is alive and well in Salem. And I had some people, when we were first talking about this, call the office and, well, I need to opt out because I was told I need to call and do this. I was like, okay, do you understand what it is before you opt out? And of course, well, no, she just was told she needed to opt out. And I caution, one of my concerns, and I understand about, this is an extra charge that's added onto your bill if you don't opt out. But when you do see some of these bills, when folks do have leaks, those bills can run thousands of dollars. And I'm concerned that perhaps the people this program could help the most, would opt out because they don't know or don't understand. And so that's, I just share that. I just wanted to bring it up as a reminder, since this will be coming out in the bills. This part of the program will go live July 1. And so they're gonna go out in these next bills that come out in the first part of June, so that folks have that full month beforehand, to call and ask questions, to opt out if they choose. So they've got, like I said, the month of June to do that.
So are we gonna have somebody at the office to explain this, or are you gonna make everybody contact?
That's really right now the better way to go, because they're gonna be able to answer details. you know, what's a qualified leak, they're gonna be able to answer that better than our folks will.
Can you get an article in the paper?
Well, I can contact the paper and ask them, yes.
I mean, not everybody gets it, but
Right.
still, and your world today also, but that would be a lot of people get that.
I mean, I can absolutely send them the information, yes.
A lot of people don't know what questions to ask.
Well, they don't.
You know, that's the problem.
Right. So that's all I had, I just wanted to do a refresher that this is coming.
Or put something in the bill when this goes live, or you said this is gonna start,
This goes this next bill.
That flyer will go
Yeah.
in.
the flyer's gonna go in.
Yes, this
with
flyer's
it.
going in this next bill, and then there's a month before the program goes live.
Oh, but you don't have to contact the paper then. I mean,
Well,
that's gonna contact
I mean,
everybody.
it's amazing how many people never
I
open their
think
bills.
it'd be safe, better safe than sorry, just to go ahead and advertise it. So that'd be for the month of,
Well, we need to do it in June, I mean, let
Yeah.
us know.
so it would start effectively.
July 1.
For July 1.
Alright, any other questions on that?
We want the IBC.
Okay, so impact, so we did have a meeting last month, that agenda is in your packet, not last month, last week, sorry. So I just wanted to give a few quick updates on things that were discussed at that meeting. So operations, and I'm probably not gonna be able to give a good synopsis of the operations themselves. They went over the actual operations of the different generation facilities that we receive our electricity from. So they had talks about planned outages, so every year these plants, and it doesn't matter if it's coal-fired or natural gas or what it is, every year they have scheduled outages for maintenance. And so they were talking about the timing of those outages. They try to time them, obviously during non-peak times of the year, to have the least amount of impact. Okay? Distribution audits, this is something that our impact pool has discussed. So, as part of our membership in this purchase pool, and I know I've been saying it's coming and I hope it's coming soon, I've reached out multiple times to BHMG, which is the consultant who would do the rate study for us for electric rates. I have nothing on when they anticipate starting that. We were waiting for the audit to be completed, we reached out as soon as that was done, I reached out a couple times since, and I'm hearing nothing from them, so I don't know when that's gonna start. I was hoping it'd be done for this coming budget year, but they do say when it starts, it takes about 4 months. But that is something that we don't pay extra for unless we choose to do extra pieces within the rate study. But one of the things that's been a recent conversation is distribution audits on our city system. So each city who's a member of MPEP, that included in our membership would be an audit that would come to our community, and they would look through our system, tour around, look at our facilities, look and see our substation, our lines, our different components to our electric system, and then give us basically an audit on, you know, do we see issues, do we see things that need upgraded or improved or maintenance or whatever that is. So that's something that they've actually started, they've done 2 or 3 cities already. I don't know exactly where we are here in Salem in that lineup. So, but that's the intent, that every couple of years there would be an audit, which would help us to know and have some reliable information on what's the condition of our system. So, an update on grants. So they did have the solar grant that we had pitched the property out in the industrial park. I don't remember, again, forgive me because it's been a few months since we met, and so the first grant that was initially applied for, was denied, but they used that same information to turn around and apply for another grant through another funding entity. Same kind of concept for the solar, so they're waiting to hear on that. So they've got a couple different applications out for grants for that.
When you look at that grant, is that a 50-50, 75-25, what
No,
is it?
so first of all, it would be, It wouldn't be the city of Salem as the grant holder, okay? It would be, what they were looking at is distributed solar. So they had a maximum number of megawatts, I wanna say it was around 20 that they were looking at, and it would be in the different communities who are members of impact. Each one, or different ones would have a piece of it, those that had facilities that, met the requirements. So, like I said, who got exactly how much, it would just depend, but it would benefit the pool as a whole. And so the grant holder would actually be MPEP or MPUA, not the city of Salem though. Because they would own it, and that's kind of per our contract, it's set up that way.
That's not a city expense, then, it's gonna be totally
Correct.
there.
Now, if we have expense, it would be on our side where it actually connects to our system. We would be responsible for that piece. Dogwood financing. So the Dogwood generation facility is a gas-fired power plant. This is the one that we established the reserves and we're paying for that reserve fund. And so for those who have questions about how long that lasts, that was a total of 2 years from the time we started making those payments, for those reserve payments. So that is moving forward. Actually, just earlier today, we were still pulling data, some of our data from our system to submit to them, for this financing package. Okay. So that is closing today or tomorrow. Natural gas prepaid. So this was one that I had talked about before, but I didn't have a lot of details on. So they have finalized now the natural gas prepay, and again, this impacts Dogwood. So when you have a natural gas fired electrical generation plant, the fluctuations in the natural gas market throughout the seasons of the year can dramatically impact that cost of power. So this natural gas prepay, it's kind of a newer thing that they've started doing. They were able to negotiate, so it closed in March. This is a contract. It is a discount of 58 cents per decatherm. David, one of you can help me explain? No help, okay, thanks. Explaining a decatherm.
10 therms.
Right,
That's all I can
exactly.
tell you.
It's not terribly helpful, but, it's how they measure natural gas. So it is a discount, it's 58 cent per decatherm discount on the purchase of natural gas for that plant. And they do that, they offer these kind of deals because of the volume that you're purchasing. So, let's see. So the MPEP, the pool as a whole, the annual benefit, looks to be over $70,000 in lower costs for that generating plant. So, for the purchase of that bulk of natural gas. Savings are expected to start the summer of 2025, so next summer. Let's see, what else do we have on here? Of course, closed session, and then reserve use authorization. So that reserve that we're paying into to build up, as MPUA staff are looking on behalf of us as MPEP members, other opportunities. You know, we had discussed previously the option to potentially purchase ownership shares in a coal-fired power plant. And I think I'd mentioned previously that that was indefinitely off the table, so that is not moving forward. But as they explore other avenues to try to find us good options for purchase of power and ownership, staff requested use of a portion of the funds. Let's see, so what was voted on was to authorize the use of up to $125,000 to do some due diligence on another prospective generation facility, to potentially purchase ownership shares. So they're doing their research, looking into, the productivity of that plant, to how that would mesh with the rest of our purchases in our systems.
Do we have anything in terms of wind power? Like if you go to Clyde, Missouri, there's all kinds of wind power up there.
Not specifically in our portfolio, no. We have natural gas, we have coal, we don't have any generation plants themselves, so, if there is wind that's in there, it's gonna be when we have to make special purchases outside of what we have, under contract. I believe we have some hydro in there too, but I can't tell you what plant that comes off of, so.
Anything else?
And for anyone who wants to know the type of generation facilities on MPUA's website, I can't tell you off the top of my head what page on their website, but they have like a graphic that shows where the different types of power generation are that MPUA in general pulls power from. So that may or may not be our MPEP group, but in general where they pull power from and the types of power. I believe that's all I have for that. Okay.
Work reports from city employees.
Steve, that's you. On, like, kind of for electric, water, wastewater, what have the guys been up to?
Sorry, bring that with me. I gave it last night, but I got it off the top of my head. So wastewater treatment plant, Josh Hunt was, resigned and went over to work for, Alliance over in Rolla. We hired, James Crawford, who's now stepping up as, he was plant manager material already. He already had all his certifications, so he's running the wastewater treatment plant this time. We actually went down to I&I training and, down at the DNR facility today, so we could, learn more about how we're gonna have to smoke out and figure out where our infiltration and inflows coming from. That when our plant gets rains, we get extra water flow. Anyway, so, that's out at the sewage plant, for electric. We've got the electric crews running around and putting in the new LED lights. They've been working on a long string of 16 lights that are burned out in, the line, power line, ground burnout in the industrial park. So they've used the vac truck, they've cut out behind 16 of the poles and found the wiring. They're gonna have to trench new lines and they'll put it in conduit, make sure it's done right, and that it lasts longer than this last batch did. So electrical, and they had also prepped all their trucks and equipment and were ready for this last windstorm, which didn't yield any major outages. We've had 3 outages due to squirrels, and I think birds, mainly squirrels. Josh likes to send me burnt squirrel pictures. The water department, we are going around and, we had, the crew's doing a great job. They're working on these sewer main breaks and different water line breaks. So, example, work all day over off of 3rd Street to put in a long sewer pipe replacement. Some, Mrs. Sanderson, I think she used to work at the Dollar General. Anyway, she had a break that popped up in her backyard through no fault of her own from her neighbor's house, but it was a city installed line years ago. And so they dug all that up and they got done roughly 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And then there was a report of a break over at Robert Judson's above their shop there. So went over, we were out there till 6:30. They dug that up and replaced the line. It's all hands on deck, a lot of teamwork. They had the break over below China King. That's been an ongoing problem with grease in the lines and stuff. We work with the code officer to make sure the grease traps are being enforced. And then we did put in a new clean out down there for them. So it's I hate to say it, but sometimes it's just fire to fire to fire. But these guys are doing a great job as best they can. And then you've got construction crews going over. It's hard to picture what your construction crew's doing for you because it's all over the place. And I've had long talks with Lloyd that runs the construction crew. I used to see the construction crew and think, I'm seeing this red truck driving around all the time. What are they doing? They're going job to job. So they'll be doing 75 foot of concrete sidewalk on a new home apron installation approach for a home up on Missouri Street. And then they'll have a project going on down to Dogtown where they're doing part of the remodel in there. And they're moving around and working. They pull out pieces here and they pour concrete here. And so they're hustling all over the city. If you're driving around, you pay attention, you'll see new concrete going in a lot of different spots. So let's see. So that's construction, water, sewer, and electricity. Does anybody have any questions about?
Well, I've been out of the industrial park and I was wondering what in the world was going out there because every single LED line has a problem. And that was because, did something go out there and break the wire? I mean, what's causing the break in the wire?
If you were driving up into the industrial park and you came to the T, and you were gonna go left to family trash,
Okay,
right above there, a line burned up in 4 spots, dropped down, set the grass on fire. That's been about a month and a half, nothing, 10 days ago maybe. Basically, the line had just,
but that's
corroded.
above ground. I thought you said there was problems below ground.
But it also caused damage down the line all the way up to the highway. So it burned off, they went and checked and metered it and said that it burned it all the way up to the highway. So that's where that's coming in. And I know there's been a lot of questions about the vac truck, and I gave this to the alderman last night. That vac truck allows them to go in there and cut out that piece and see all that wiring without using a backhoe, without 4 people with shovels in there. It's an amazing tool. They cut out 16 holes behind it, and now they've got a trench, and there's a lot of rock through there. The locates are done, they'll run new line. It's unfortunate, but when you get down in some of this stuff, you start seeing, no offense to anybody that put stuff in the ground years ago, but you start seeing a little bit of subpar craftsmanship.
I guess I'm a little confused. The spark was above ground, but it blew the line out all the way underground?
Underground. It cooked off in some spots.
And how will PVC help that?
Well, if you put it in conduit down through there, it's less likely to have issues with rock or any of that stuff. I would have to have Josh give you the specifics on how.
With the heat and thaw that goes with the freezing, that can cause some real issues with underground line if it's not in
Yeah,
conduit.
but it doesn't seem like this is what started this one. This was above ground that started it.
But it burnt up the underground sections
Yeah,
of
I
the wire,
understand.
and so putting it, under will help protect it in the future. Are they undergrounding what was overhead too?
I don't believe so, because that runs under the road.
So you got
right
multiple
there, so.
spots here in town like that, Don?
Yeah.
One on Craig Drive, I think, it's also did the same way around Westwood Drive as well, the new subdivision behind Lake Start. Yeah.
I'm apologies if I had Josh here, I'd give you a full answer there on that, but,
I mean, that's an expense, that's a pretty good expense.
it is. And even do it during the excavation behind the poles, there are line connections that just had electrical tape wrapped around them. I mean, there was a saying at one time in the city, this'll get me through retirement, and that's how it got done. So.
That was put in by our people, wasn't it? That whole line was put in by our people.
Well, I can't speak.
Predates him and us, we probably
Yeah.
really don't know.
I
All
don't
I-
know when that was put in.
All I can tell you is going forward, we're doing the best in making sure it's
Yeah,
gonna be right.
okay, thanks.
I have a question. There's a light at the end of, I believe it's Vanderbilt Lane over in the Housing Authority off of 3rd,
Okay.
over by the high school.
Mhm.
And this has been going on for like 3 years. They cannot get the light replaced. They come to you. They say, your office or whoever they talked to said it was a housing authority problem.
Oh,
So
okay.
who does it belong to? Is it the city or is it the
This is-
housing authority?
This is the first I've heard of it,
Okay,
so.
it's at the very end of, Vanderbilt Lane. And if you look right across, you'll see the armory.
Everything you and I have talked about, I've got my people on, as best I can.
appreciate that.
It's at the end of Vanderbilt Lane.
Yes.
And, a lot of times I think people get a little burned out because they've tried and I just ask that, having been here a month, that you give me an opportunity. And if it goes through the right channels and the work order gets initiated through the 4811 number, or a phone message left for me, I'll run it down as best I can, but.
Appreciate you looking into that.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other things that anybody else wanna talk about? Okay, we're ready for the MPUA mutual aid agreement.
Did you wanna talk about this, Steve? The mutual aid agreement? Or you haven't had a chance to?
I haven't had a chance to
Okay.
look it over.
Okay, we may need to bump it to a future meeting then. So we, just a really quick, and if that's okay, with the board, we'll bump it to a future meeting. The purpose of the mutual aid is, should we have a natural disaster, we have some accident that happens that takes out a large portion of our grid, especially for electricity, that we would have this agreement already in place, should we need help from other member cities. Okay, and so I know there have been other cities, that have used it recently, where they've had tornadoes touch down and take out sections of line, and their crews, and just like ours would be, they don't have enough people to get it back in a timely fashion. And so this would lay the groundwork for who does what and how, and who has liabilities for what. So we'll bump that to a future meeting, if that's okay. We don't have to have it in place till August 1st, I believe, so.
Apologies, I did scan over it, but I did not understand totally if there's
Right.
fees incurred or any of that type of thing, but obviously you can't go wrong with a mutual aid agreement as far as when we have a disaster, so.
Okay. Okay, Stacy and Sally, it's your turn, draft budget presentation.
So,
Yep.
Okay, so an update on our utility usage and revenues. First two columns are the, prior 2 years. Then we have July through April of last fiscal year for comparison, and then year-to-date for this fiscal year. And these numbers are through April. Electric kilowatt hours, we have billed out around 42.9 million kilowatt hours. That is down roughly 5% compared to the same time frame as last year. Electric revenues billed is a little over 6 million, with 232,000 of that being the availability fee. So far, year-to-date, we have collected just under 5.9 million. Then our purchase of power, that is the payments we make to MPUA for the power the city as a whole uses. We are pretty close to the same as we were the same time frame as last year at 3.8 million. Water consumption, so we have billed out a little over 105 million gallons. That is down compared to the same time frame as last year. Water revenues billed is around 677,000, with 131,000 of that being from the base rate. Year to date, we have collected around 689,000 of water revenues. On sewer consumption, we billed out just over 96 million gallons. Sewer revenues billed is around 886,000, with 127,000 of that being the base rate. Sewer revenues collected year to date is around 891,000.
When you look at that, we only have one more month to hit budget, right? June
This is
starts
through
the first.
April, so I'll have May and June.
2 months.
Yeah,
We'll
these-
have 2 months.
yeah. These numbers go to the end of April.
It starts in June, it's June 1 starts the
No,
next
July
year, but-
1 starts the
July
budget
1.
year, yeah. But, so these are through April, I mean, we
Yeah.
can't report May numbers yet. because we're-
Yeah, I mean, so I was just looking at how close will we hit our budget
Mhm.
to get to 100%.
Gotcha.
Ready to go on?
Okay, so these are, there's a lot of numbers here, so if I'm going too fast, I lose you, or if you have questions, just please stop me and I'll look at it again. So, as always, the top section is the revenues, and we show prior 2 years what we have budgeted for this budget year. Then we got a highlighted column, which is year-to-date for this fiscal year. And we'll look at that right now. So year-to-date, we are at 6.4 million in revenues. And we project to end this fiscal year, the next column, we project to end this fiscal year at 7.4 million. And then on expenditures, year-to-date, we have spent almost 4.8 million. And we expect to end the budget year at 5.8 million. So it brings us down to a surplus, we'll have a surplus of around 495,000 at the end of this fiscal year. And then if you want to look at the draft budget, so if you'll scroll back up. So the next highlighted column there is the proposed draft budget. And these numbers may be different than the numbers that were presented last week, cause, we're working on this daily, so, okay, so on the draft budget, we, major changes to the revenues. So if you look over to the right column, that shows you the difference between our current year's budget and the draft budget. So positive is adding and negative is decreasing. So the major changes to revenues, estimated, we decreased the revenues around 3% because we do continue to see a reduction in our usage. So we're budgeting around $200,000 less for this fiscal year. It is hard to predict that because you don't know what kind of weather we're gonna have. If it's a super hot or super cold weather, that's going to fluctuate that budget line. So estimated revenues projections are around 7.2 million, with expenditures projections around 6.3 million. So the major changes in the expenditures, again, if you look over on the right side column. So major changes, we propose a 3% cost of living raise and a 2% merit for those who qualify based on performance evaluations. So even with the increase, you will see a reduction in that expense line due to changes in positions and salary amounts. Then in the miscellaneous line, you'll see a jump of 33,000. That is a combination of, sales tax payable. In this budget year, I just under budgeted, so I upped that for this next coming budget year. Also, our general insurance is going up about 28%. So that's gonna jump that line up. On the utilities, you see the jump of 92,000. Again, that's our purchase of power line. I increased it a little bit over this fiscal year, just because, again, you can't really predict what the weather's gonna be like. That can go way under or it can go way over, so it's hard to say. On the other uses, down at the bottom there, it's 908,000. So in that line, we have 65,000 going to our electric replacement fund. We have 212,000 going to the electric reserve fund. Also another 280,000 going to the electric reserve fund, and that is from the availability fees. And then 351,000 is going to the general fund. And that amount is based on a 5% franchise fee. That amount is what a lot of other cities use as a guide to transfer to their general fund. The transfer to general fund is to cover the work that is performed out of the general fund on behalf of the utilities. And that is a portion of staff salaries, the mechanic, administrator, financial activities, attorney fees, city clerk. So it's a combination of several things. We do want to point out the transfer from utilities, from electric to general fund has dramatically reduced. In 2018, 2019, 2021, it was around 1.2 million that we transferred. So this budget year, we lowered it to 600,000, and now we're down to 350,000. So pretty substantial reduction.
In case anyone's wondering, so that 5% that we're basing that transfer on, that is pretty standard. If our utilities were a standalone utility company not owned by the city, that was operating in the city limits of Salem, they would be paying that 5% franchise fee to the city for operating within our city boundaries. And so that's on par with what industry standards are. And so that's why a lot of cities use that as their measurement stick of how much to transfer.
Okay, so in the draft budget, that will leave the electric fund as a surplus of close to 9,000. And then the beginning fund balance at the beginning of next fiscal year, we anticipate the fund balance beginning at 907,000. We would end the fund balance at 916,000.
I have a question.
Yes.
Under personnel, that is all salaries?
Okay. If you want to go to the next
Yeah, the next pages have the detail
Yeah.
breakout for each of those items. Next revenue.
Okay, starts right there, actually. So it's salaries along with unemployment, workman's comp, we've got taxes, health insurance, and then short-term, life insurance, and then retirement. So several things come out of there that hits the personnel.
Last year, for this year, there was a 5%, increase in salaries, is that correct?
4%,
It was 4%.
cost of living raises.
And then what are you projecting for this next year?
A 3% cost of living for everyone, and then a 2% merit increase, which is based on their evaluations and performance.
Okay, so last year was a total of 4 between the two,
Last year was only COLA,
was only 4, okay.
Yeah.
And then this year it'll be 5.
total, right,
If,
but not everyone will
if they
receive
have
that.
good
Right.
reviews.
Now,
I just have a concern about with the economy and everything,
gotcha.
you know, 4% last year and potentially 5% again this year.
Keep in mind that the year before that, there was 0. I'm just, I mean, it's part of the whole equation.
And the 3%, cost of living raise, we did get that from the, what did you put?
Right, we based that on the consumer price index for our region, it's out of the, St. Louis office, and so that's what that's based on, that recommendation.
I just know there's, in Salem, we have a lot of poor people. And between 2 years, you're talking 9%.
Right.
That seems to be pretty large for this community to be able to handle with the current economy that we're in.
And I understand that, I also understand that there have been raises to those who were on social security, over the last 2 years, there have been.
Oh, I know.
I know, I'm just saying that it's, you know, the other piece of that is we can't expect to have good qualified people if we're paying them at poverty level.
Well,
You wanna keep the people, the good people, and we don't want, do we want those poor people doing the jobs that these people are doing? They wouldn't do it.
let me give you an example. I'm on disability. And those raises you're talking about were taken away by the cost of Medicare. So I can guarantee you, y'all's salaries are a heck of a lot better than what I'm trying to survive on. And to use this excuse of good quality people is an insult.
Yes. May I?
Yeah.
You guys are making
I
really
disagree.
good salaries now, you don't need another
Yeah,
raise.
I disagree with that. Like, I mean, we have guys working on electric lines, you know, water lines, they're specialized people with training and everything else. It's a trained thing.
I have daily conversations with teams with guys across, and the ladies across the utilities. A lineman can typically go anywhere and make $30+ an hour. We don't pay anywhere near that. We have a electrical shop of 4 guys trying to keep up. We have a water shop with a superintendent and a foreman, and a foreman who I have to constantly have conversations. I have to have conversations with them all about, please bear with us, we're working with you as best we can, because they can go get better money elsewhere. We have Rolla, and I know that
The
sounds like it's
employees are
easy.
holding you hostage.
I'm sorry, so, I'm having these conversations daily, and I try to explain to them, you have a benefits package. And they just, everybody's hurting right now, so they look at the bottom line, the dollar. And they can go make more other places, and I'm just trying to keep my team together and keep, like she said, quality, or you said quality people. And it's tough.
I think we lost a tremendously good person that was in the water and sewer.
Yeah, Josh.
Oh, absolutely.
Josh was, very, very knowledgeable, he went somewhere else and we lost him.
And now
I
it's gonna
think-
cost us more.
Six-
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, John. I know.
$6 raise an hour, a truck and a fuel card. They did everything to come pick him up at his house
Yeah,
and drive him
I
out
thought it
and
was
say.
a tremendous
So
loss.
I totally understand, but I mean, I wouldn't fib to you. This is what I've seen in the month and a half, and they're just, we're losing, we're down, we're just barely kind of keeping things going at this point. And if I lose some of these people, and it's not, it's just a tough spot to be in, because when we put out the jobs for applications, we're getting 1, 2 that wanna work for the street department. No one wants to get in and work on a sewer line. And so I'm trying to keep these people, and they need a $1 an hour bump to
Well, let
stay
me,
and feel good about it.
okay, and here's where I'm coming from, and probably majority of the people in this town. You increase these people's salaries that make very good money in the small, tiny, poor town. You raise my taxes, I don't have enough money to pay things like food.
I don't have an answer for your situation.
That's where I'm coming
sorry.
from.
And I understand that. I'm trying to.
So you get 4% last year and potentially 5% this year, that's 9% in 2 years. And I get, what Biden gave us 8% a couple years ago, that all got taken away because Medicare went up. So to tell me that, you know, we get a cost of living, it's a joke.
I'm trying to keep the city running.
Well, I understand that,
Trying to-
but
and I'm not-
9% in 2 years,
I don't have an applicant pool. No one's coming out to take the
it's not
jobs.
just you,
qualified.
it's everywhere. People don't wanna work because the federal government is paying people to stay home.
And I understand that. I hope you understand our, where we're at. We're trying to keep the folks that we have and build a better team,
Yeah,
so that
those
you have
of us
better things.
here tonight as staff are doing our best to keep our people here, so that we can keep toilets flushing and the lights on. And if we don't do some of these things, we won't be able to.
That or we'll have to charge extra for training a new person, acquiring people.
If we can even
We'll have to
find
do that.
somebody.
If we have to do that, that'd be one thing.
I think if it came down to it and you lost, let's just say hypothetically, you lost all your employees, okay? City loses all of its employees, right? What's your next step? Contract work, cause a lot of cities are doing that. They contract work out from sewer treatment plants. You know what that costs? A lot more than what you pay your current employees. And I do agree with you, Trina. I mean, the federal government needs to do something. Because they're the reason why the sewer treatment plant upgrades, all that. If you start looking at your bills, which I never typically pay attention to mine, because I make a decent living. I'm not on a fixed, well, I'm on a fixed income when I get paid, the money's gone after you spend it, but if you look at it, your sewer is almost catching up with your utility, your electric. Has anybody ever paid attention to your sewer? Your sewer costs are about the almost, they're almost borderline with your electric, right? But that's federal government. That's not city government. That has mandates, and then if you don't do what they say, then they start fining you. Okay? But, I mean, that's where we're at right now. You either pay for the employees that we have now, or they get poached, just like Josh did, from other cities that can afford to pay more because they have a bigger source pool. I mean, here in Salem, we're out here in rural America. We don't have the biggest source of income here. But you either have your guys poached, or if you have to start contracting work out, it's gonna be a lot more expensive.
The comment was made being held hostage. I no longer argue with them. I tell them, if they threaten with, well, I'll just resign and go somewhere else, I'll type up the letter for you to sign. Because I've tried to talk, and I've tried to barter. I tell them what their benefits package is worth per hour, what it costs the city. And it's just, when someone can go and they don't they're younger, they don't care about benefits because they're not at the age where they think about that stuff, and they can go make better money working for a construction crew, so. Anyway, sorry to beat a dead horse, I understand you, and I hope you understand where I'm coming from.
I would also say, like, most companies offer COLA increases. It's not just like a municipality thing or a state thing. You know, like, this year I got like a 3.2 from Doe Run, you know, which is about on par.
I think I got 25 cents.
Yeah, but what's that in percentage? I have no idea.
Okay.
But that would be my contention. It's something that is usual, you know, it's almost expected. If you hold it, it looks bad. If you hold it back at all, you lose people, you do.
Okay, well, let's try to get back on topic.
Ready to move on?
Okay, is there anything within the electric fund that you want to look at, any line details? Just skimming across, looking at the right-hand column.
Yes.
I think I covered most of it, but what you got?
Yeah, so I was looking, I saw that there's a budget item, we're looking at 53,000 for the computer stuff. We've spent like 18 over the past 2 years.
Where are you, Kyle?
1 second, we got off track and I had my thumb on it and then I moved around.
So you're in the detail, right?
Yeah, I'm in the details. I'm looking at expenditures. Computer software, it is on page 5 of the water fund piece. Safety and training at the top, so.
Computer software.
Yeah, there it is. Computer software is one of them. So I saw you had budgeted, you spent 18, you got 53 budgeted again.
That's special services.
So.
It's like a double, you know,
So
than
part
what
of
you.
this, okay, so this is something that, I don't know if you guys remember, so you'll see that last year, or the current year is the first year that shows up in here.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's why I was just asking.
there was previously a whole bunch of stuff dumped into like miscellaneous. So last year, Stacy and I started the effort to start breaking out some of those bigger expense items that were previously just classified as miscellaneous. And one thing that we identified citywide, not just for utility accounts, was that software services. So we were talking about NextGrid earlier, our AMI system, that's a software service. Okay, so that's part of what this is for this fund. It's the NextGrid, it's any other software. So Acceleron, when we talked about that prepay system that we're using pieces of so far for online payments and stuff, that's all software services. That's what that is.
And the 53.8 versus what we're spending 18, that's, because we haven't paid Acceleron.
Right, they haven't started
Okay,
billing.
yeah, that's what I was.
So when they start
That
paying
makes
us,
sense.
it will be.
Yeah, I just noticed like it started coming up, you budgeted like 53, spent 18, I was like,
Right.
50, are you gonna hit
Previously, it was just a
53?
miscellaneous.
Yeah.
So we're trying to break those out to show just what's going on within the budgets.
Yeah, the only other one, and this is a small thing, is stuff like lighting maintenance, in the maintenance budget, so going down further.
Down further?
No, it's in maintenance, so, yeah, right there, so I'm looking at it, you're seeing about, and this is small potatoes, but I'm seeing like 15,000 being budgeted, you know, again for this year, whereas we're spending around like
That's
6.
the streetlights, yeah, Josh
Okay.
only ordered half of what he initially was going to. I think he was supposed to be putting in another order, I'm not sure if he's done that yet.
Okay, is that, so it's probably not like hit the budget this year or something, or it didn't yet, or we're buying it next month or something?
Correct.
Okay.
Waiting for it to come.
Yeah, and I know it's only like, 7,000, but it was just something I noticed that it was like, we were spending about 6 and then we're budgeting 15,
Right.
didn't hit
But
it,
if you
budgeting
remember, we
15
had a
again.
backlog, and for the longest time, we couldn't get the lights.
No, I remember
And
that,
so
yeah.
we
I
were
do
waiting
remember
for those to
that.
come in, so.
Okay.
They've installed over 25 new ones at this point, so
Nice.
maybe creeping up on 30 now, they're getting around to it, so.
Did you intend to go back to page 3 and 4?
No, unless you want to look at it.
No, I don't, I was just concerned that maybe somebody had concerns about pages 3 and 4, and it was jumped ahead to page 5 without there being none.
Oh.
Where are you? Oh,
No,
sorry.
yeah.
The summary,
I was trying to
yeah.
figure out where the numbers on the page were, sorry.
Then I would just,
3, 4, yeah, it's kinda more if you guys have questions about a specific item.
know they're using those vehicles a lot, and I know we have like the hydrovac truck to do, to make sure they're doing vehicle maintenance. I see that we got like 400 year to date, the projected end is like 1,500 out of a $4,000 budget.
I don't know where you're at.
I'm at the maintenance still, still on the maintenance on page 4.
On page 4.
Yeah, but that's not like, you know, we're doing like $400 in maintenance typically on trucks, and I know they use those trucks a hell of a lot, so.
Yeah.
You know, if we're budgeting 4,000, let's make sure it's getting done.
Right.
That's the only thing I have.
Gotcha. And in electric, a lot of their trucks, other than just the pickup, their bucket trucks, the digger derrick, those type of specialized are
Yeah, they have special-
certified, they have to be inspected regularly, so I mean, that's all happening.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they'd be grounded.
Yeah, no, I understand that, yeah, there's specialty.
A question is concerning maintenance of our vehicles. We try to do our own maintenance, right, at the sheds, in terms of oil changes and stuff like that, we do our own
We have a
personnel to
city
do that,
mechanic.
right?
Yes.
And when she's talking about it going out for,
That's for a mechanical problem that's beyond where we're doing.
and the buckets are a little more intricate than that.
Yeah. Electric equipment has to be certified by
I got that.
a special inspector, yeah.
Yeah, I just noticed we were, you know, budgeting like for, you know, almost,
Right.
you know, 8 times what we spent typically, so I was curious. Or making $1 apparently in 2021.
That's all bad.
I have a question. Cory, what is super now interest?
That's our bank interest
Okay.
on the bank.
I just thought it was weird. Super now interest.
Yeah, I don't know why it's called that.
It's a now is a type of account, it's a negotiable order of withdrawal.
All right.
Okay, I didn't know.
Your budget.
That's all I have for.
So this is our electric replacement fund. The only revenue into this fund is bank interest and whatever is transferred from the electric operating fund. So for the current fiscal year, so we're bringing in about 52,000 in revenues. And then for expenditures, we budgeted for transformers and poles and a portion of the hydrovac truck. I'm being told that there's a long lead time on transformers and poles, so it probably will not come out of this budget year. But we did move it over to the draft budget year.
The transformers pole prices are changing so fast, it's hard for him to get 3 bids that are good for more than 2 to 3 days.
Why is that?
Because of all the tornado damage across the country, so that stuff just does this.
And especially electrical components in general have been that way since COVID. The timeframe that they'll hold the price for you just keeps getting shorter and shorter. Yeah, and so it becomes nearly impossible. And the lead time on transformers is 6-7 months sometimes. So it's, yeah. I know for the few, construction projects that have been going on in town, new build, they're needing to have sometimes 6 to 8 months lead time in order to get the transformer that they need sized for their project.
Well, when we look at our city and we look at some of the transformers that are, do we have transformers sitting idle on poles? I mean, I look at the one on, where I live, there's 3 transformers, they used to feed I think a concrete plant that was over in the SBU field at one time. Now, someone told me that those 3 transformers, which there's hardly any houses here, it's a 3-phase because somebody has an elevator in their home. And the elevator was for 3-phase, that had to do with the pharmaceutical person that lived in our area.
Okay.
Three transformers, I mean, it takes 3 transformers for a 3-phase system, I guess.
And sometimes in commercial capacity, that company may have paid for those, and then they may have been left in place after.
Well, that's my question, do we have any number of transformers that are just left in place that could be, applied for broken ones?
I'll ask the question, if I can ever get you an answer. That, I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
can't tell you.
mean, I just know what that one corner has, and there's only little houses around there, but there's 3 transformers hanging on that pole.
Are they good?
I would think.
How would you know if they're just saying?
Well, I mean, if they're hanging there and they're no good, take them down, but if they're hanging there and they're good, they're to be used somewhere else when we need them.
I can ask Josh, and let you know.
They have that purchase by the industry. They don't own them anyway.
Do what?
If they were purchased by the industrial facility.
No, these aren't,
then
and,
they don't. You talk
oh,
about concrete plant.
well, that was,
Yeah.
in the area by SBU.
You
I
talk
mean,
about
there's 3
concrete plant.
transformers hanging on that
So
one pole.
If they bought them and put them up, then we don't own them.
Oh, I think there's city, I think.
That's,
the question.
that's a thing, that's why I wasn't sure, I can't tell you for sure, because
Oh, well, I don't know either. I mean, it's an interesting question.
when Four Rivers goes in where the old Hagel factory was, they'll be purchasing some of that
So,
equipment.
Yeah.
so how that works though, so they become part of our system. We become the owner because they're part of our system. The company has to pay for that larger transformer because it's not something that the city would otherwise need. That need for that larger capacity and that extra expense is because that company is there, and that's why they pay for that upfront.
Yeah, there's no company here. There's
Well, no,
just-
but if there was originally though, that created that 3-phase transformer, then that's why that's there and in place.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that would be true if there was a concrete plant, they probably needed 3 phases, I guess.
Yeah, depends on what equipment they had, yeah, I don't know, so, long before my time.
But I'll educate myself and then I'll educate you folks.
Well, when you go by where I had my shop, you'll see 3 transformers hanging on that one pole.
Roger that.
And I'm only using one.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay. You
I
don't
don't,
have
I
an
don't have any 50
elevator or
horsepower
anything?
motors in there.
Okay.
Okay, so in the draft budget for the replacement fund, we've got, like I said, transformers and poles budgeted, very last column. So around 64,000, so, since there's no revenue that comes into this fund, we have to do a transfer from the electric operating fund, so that's that 65,000. Transfer from electric, which makes this ending balance of around 4,000 for the budget year. The ending fund balance will be around almost 62,000.
And remember, this is the DNR, so depreciation and replacement fund. So for vehicles, for equipment, for things like that that need replaced regularly, we put the money aside each year to help fund those. You're gonna start seeing this a little different as we move forward in years, and you may see some at the next meeting. As we're still putting together details for the capital improvement plan, we'll start budgeting, you know, in X years, we'll need to replace X vehicle, and we'll start budgeting a yearly amount to put into this fund for that future replacement. So those details aren't there yet. Moving on.
So this is a look at the electric reserve fund. So for the current fiscal year, we have almost 36,000 in revenues, that's, all interest, bank interest. And then, expenditures, well, we haven't had any expenditures, but, other sources we got budgeted 545,000 coming into this fund, and that's, coming from the electric fund, that is, 5% of the prior year expenses to come into the reserve account. And then, we also have, I think close to 280,000 of the availability fee that comes into here. In the draft budget, so we have, about 38,000 in interest revenue that will come in. And then we've got budgeted to come from the electric fund, 492,000. Again, that's, 5% of the prior year expenses going to reserves, and then the availability fee, which is around 280,000. And then that will leave the ending fund balance of around 1.8 million. And if you go to the next screen, it kind of breaks it out in a different, it just looks different, but it just shows the beginning balance of the upcoming fiscal year. We will start the reserve account at 1.3 million. We anticipate 38,000 in interest revenues, and then again, there's that 5% transfer, I think it's a little bit less, but 212,000, and then that availability fee is the 280,000. Our 25% reserve goal is to have almost 1.4 million into this account. So So, at the end of the 25 fiscal year, we will have 1.8 million.
And remember, just one budget year ago, we started with 19,000. So. And so this is to hedge against another February 2021 event or some type of natural disaster, so that we have this in place, we don't have to finance just continuing operations, that we have this in hand.
Next screen. And this is just a summary of what we just went over of all three of those funds. So it shows on the left, the very beginning balance of the upcoming fiscal year. So we should end this fiscal year with those balances there at the beginning. No, the beginning fund balance is where we start.
Okay.
Where we end this fiscal year and
Gotcha.
start the next fiscal year. And then we have what is in the proposed budget, the revenues, expenses, and then your transfers in and out. And then within that budget year, whether we're in a surplus or a deficit. And then, as of June 30th of 2025, that's where our fund balances will be.
So just a quick, this would be operating fund, the 915,000, this would be our depreciation and replacement fund, and then this would be our reserve account.
So depreciation and replacement is to fund things that like, you know, that should be a revolving fund of replacement items of things that like, you know, poles and stuff. That seems awfully low.
Well, yes,
And I know we just started playing with this, and we just started
Right.
taking a look at this.
Right,
And I guess my little question to the committee would be kind of asking like, you know, right now we've pretty well funded the reserve fund, you know, coming up.
Right.
Something I would personally think about.
So
is
that's
looking
a,
at that.
and we don't have a draft proposal for you
Yeah.
guys to look at right now. Stacy and I were talking earlier, you know, our current reserve policy says, you know, 25% of the previous year's operating expenditures is what we should have in reserves. And then it also says that we're gonna transfer 5% a year, okay? So to me, once you hit your 25%, unless we make a decision to change that amount somewhere, then that 5% or more is what should be going to your repair and replacement fund. That's not how our policy reads right now, but that's kind of our recommendation. You know, and should something happen that we deplete part of our reserve account, then you should start building that back up first, and then once you hit that goal, then you put back into your repair and replacement. So the other piece that I mentioned just a bit ago though too, Kyle, to your point, so again, we just split out this repair and replacement fund to something we're using just a few months ago, okay, separated it out from reserve account. So what you're not hearing right now, what's going on behind the scenes with staff, is we have taken every piece of equipment, every vehicle that the city owns, citywide, every department, and basically put them on a spreadsheet and said, okay, so if this piece of equipment has a lifespan of X years, then we're gonna divide the cost of that piece of equipment by X years and put it out and set aside so much every year for its future replacement. We don't have those numbers finalized yet to say, here's what's the recommended to fund this depreciation and replacement fund. So you guys will see that next meeting, okay? But we're still, again, kinda like I mentioned at finance, workshop last week, we're still very preliminary. We're still working through with staff, as well as all the different committees about the different pieces of this budget. So that piece we don't have yet, okay? That dollar amount, what it is.
Chairwoman Dent, can I ask a question that's very confusing right now? If you go back to the previous slide, when it talks about the electric reserve fund, it looks like the date is wrong. Are you saying that it's 1,846,540 anticipated for 6/30/24 or 6/30/25?
Should be 25.
It's on every single one of these that way, and it kind of was going, I was thinking, something's not reading right.
I will get that fixed, thank you.
So it is 25? That's
Yes.
okay.
I have a question on that very slide too. The availability fee, I thought we were gonna try to sunshine or get rid of that at some point.
When I made that proposal, it was a $10 with a sunshine of 1 year. When that date was hit, then we moved that to $8, cause we still were not hitting our reserve, and we needed to move.
So it's gonna always be $8.
Oh, I
then?
don't think it's always gonna be, I think that was, I don't know if we did that on a sunshine,
Sunset.
a sunset, sunshine.
No,
A sunset.
I
We
think,
did, but I'd have to look
yeah,
at the
I
code
think there's a,
itself.
I think there's a sunset to it
Yeah, I
on 1
think
year,
there
if
was.
I recall correctly, and we're gonna hit it pretty quick. It
Right.
depends on how we wanna do it, if we wanted to stretch it out
Yeah,
over an
when,
entire
and when we
year.
get into the actual rate conversations, we
Yeah.
can talk about that, cause that's part of it.
Yeah.
But that's based then on keeping it for the 25
Yes.
season.
Correct.
or
It
year.
was for 1 year.
But that,
But
This assumes that we keep it,
Right.
keep an $8 for a year.
Right.
Yes. Don't make me yell at your ear.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to the water fund. So the year-to-date revenues are $758,000. We anticipate ending this fiscal year at $909,000. On expenditures year-to-date, we are at $685,000, and we anticipate ending the fiscal year at $815,000. In each category, we have, based upon what we've budgeted, we've come right around this, what we have budgeted, or we've slightly under what we have budgeted. So we anticipate having a surplus of around $95,000 at the end of this fiscal year, and that is around $90,000 better than what we had budgeted for. I'm looking at the draft budget, again, the major changes, I did reduce the revenue projections around 3% since we continue to see a loss in revenues. So that reduces close to around 33,000. So revenue projections are around 886,000 with expenditure projections around 861,000. The major changes in the expenditures, again, increase in personnel pay with the COLA and the merits. And then, even with the increases in pay, we do have a reduction in that expense line due to changes in positions and salary amounts. On the miscellaneous line, it doesn't really show there, but if you look at the details, the general insurance again is going up 28%. The capital improvement, you'll see that reduction there, and that's because we paid off a backhoe lease. Well, it really wasn't a lease, it was, financed it. But we paid that off on this current budget year. We do have 41,500 going into the replacement fund. And that leaves this fund a deficit of 17,000 at this point. So it will end this fund balance at 813,000, almost 814,000 will be in that fund balance. Let's go down and look at some of the details. If anyone sees anything that stands out?
Yeah, I'm interested in what is a water tower rental? We have a water tower in somebody's land somewhere that we have to rent from?
That is Wave Internet, they rent space off of
So
one of
they're
our.
paying us, that's a
Yeah.
revenue.
That's a revenue.
Yeah.
So that they're leasing space on top of our water tower to set their
Oh,
antennas.
for towers, for
Yes.
antennas and stuff like that. Oh, I see. Does that ever change?
I mean, it could,
I mean, if there's inflation,
right, I mean, it could.
We have talked about that a little bit, but they, Wave Internet, they give us a really good discount for the pool, for internet at the pool. So it's kind of an offset, so we haven't really raised their rates since they haven't raised ours for the internet.
Go ahead.
The next fund, or?
We can look at the water DNR fund. Okay, so water DNR fund. So the revenues for this fund comes from transfers from the operating fund and then grants revenue. So for this fiscal year, projected revenues are around, year-to-date are 194,000. We project to bring in 357,000. For the expenditures, year-to-date, we are at 267,000. We project to spend 357,000 of that. And in that expense line, we have, water replacements for 60,000, fencing, around one of our wells for around 40,000. We have the grant, lead service line. I'm not sure if we're gonna have any expenses in this budget year, so I did not put it in our projected. But, then we have the grant as far as the new well and tower design. We anticipate to spend 188,000 of this fiscal year. Then we had the reconditioning and painting of a water tank, which is 68,000. And then we had the hydrovac truck. So we estimate we will use, or we will end this fiscal year at 357,000 in expenditures, leaving a surplus of 577,000. And within the water fund, we got the grant that we have right now is the ARPA grant. We have the new well and tower. That total grant amount was 3.7 million with a city match of 38,000. And then we also have an ARPA grant, which is the lead service line inventory. That grant amount is 150,000 with a 30,000 city match. And I did put that in the back of your packet that breaks down those grants.
Yeah.
Oh, and then the draft budget, we haven't talked about that. Sorry, for draft budget, we anticipate around 1.6 million in revenues, and most of that is the grant funding. So we got 1.6 in grant funds there. So 150,000 of that is the lead service line inventory, and then the ARPA grant, we anticipate maybe 1.4 million of revenues. And then on the expenditure side, we have 20,000, as Steve was talking about the hydrants, we've got budgeted 20,000 to, put some work into our fire hydrants. Then we got 60,000 in water line replacements. 180,000 of that grant is the lead line service line inventory. And then the almost 1.5 million is the ARPA grant for the new well and tower. So if you scroll down, for other uses, we have 41,500 coming in from the water operating account. This does leave us a deficit of 75,000 for the budget year. And then this, for the ending fund balance, we're gonna end the fund in the negative of 25,000, which we cannot do because we do not have a balanced budget. So, we'll talk about that in a minute on what we want to do about that. So if you go to, let's look at the water reserve account. So for year to date, we have 29,000 in interest revenues coming in. The only revenue that comes into here is interest revenues or funds that come from the water operating account. So on the draft budget, we've got about 31,000 in interest revenues. And then I don't have anything budgeted to come into the reserve account from the operating because this fund, it has 25% of what we say that it should have. So if we go to the next slide, it here's the water reserve. Yeah, so our reserve goal is to have 208,000. We have 776, so we're exceeding that by 500,000. So, and then the next slide. Okay, this is a picture of all the funds again, just the water funds. Again, the beginning balance is how we anticipate to end this fiscal year and to start the next fiscal year. And then you have your draft budget, revenues, expenditures, transfers in and out. And then you see where we have a deficit in the water fund and the water DNR fund. And then the ending balance, yeah. So we do have a deficit there in ending balances. So our options are, we can either pull for that 25,000 deficit in the water DNR fund. We can, well, first of all, let me back up. For the water fund, the operating fund, the deficit of 17,000 there, we can choose to reduce expenses somewhere, or we can pull from that beginning balance, fund balance, which is 830,000, which would end that fund balance in 814,000. If we pull from prior year fund balance. As far as the water DNR, because we have a deficit there, we would either have to pull from the water fund balance, we can transfer to that. We can choose to, cut something out of that as far as expenses that we've got budgeted. Or we can raise rates to cover any deficit, so that would be a recommendation from you all on what you think we need to do.
I think we need to pull it from, instead of raising rates, I mean, we're having so much. Huh?
Pull from prior year.
I agree with you there.
I would say that as well.
Do you need that in terms of a motion?
I don't think we need it as a
It's a
motion right
draft
now.
budget right
And we could, this is draft, so we could take that as a recommendation, make those changes, and so next meeting when we present, that will be included. And at next meeting is when you guys will need to vote on the final, so, does that make sense? So, but yeah, this is the type of feedback we need as we move forward, of what you guys in general want to do. You ready to move on?
You all are, yes. Okay, sewer fund. Okay, year-to-date revenues, we're at 916,000. We anticipate to end the fiscal year at 1.1 million in revenues. And then with expenditures expected, we expect to, okay, 862,000 year-to-date. We expect to spend right at $1 million, leaving the fund balance at 47,000 surplus. So if we look at the draft budget, again, major changes in revenue. We did reduce the usage a little bit, that reduced the revenues, so, reduced it around 18,000 as far as the revenue projections. So the draft budget, we anticipate 1.1 million in revenues, expenditures of 1.1 million, a little bit over. And the major changes, again, is the same as, the other.
Well, this one's a little bit different though. This,
Yeah, I'm getting to that. Okay, so the main issue, main changes in the expenditures is the cost of living raise and the merit raise, of course. But then we also, due to, DNR regulations, they tell us that we are supposed to have 4 employees at the wastewater plant.
we've been operating with 2 for the past several years. And new, so we have a new, basically collection system management plan. And with that, DNR says we have to have 4.
And is that overkill? I mean,
So
Do
in
we
the
have-
past, what we've done, we've operated the plant itself, just the plant operations with 2 people. And so those 2 people, while we would pull them as needed for emergencies, they weren't the main crew who would do sewer line work. Well, because our water and our sewer crews are kind of merged together under one department, water and wastewater, they flex. So if our water guys need to go work on a sewer line, that's what they do. So we didn't have the staffing in the plant per se. And DNR is now saying you have to have 4 dedicated for plant operation and sewer collection.
does this have anything to do with the size of the facility? I mean, do you have to have 4 due to the fact that it's got a certain capacity?
I think it has more to do with I don't know what measurement they're using.
I mean, if you had a real small one, you're not gonna put 4 people there, it
Well,
seems like
but
there
I
would
think
be a
it has more to
capacity.
do with your lines, your collection lines. and how many miles or whatever measurement.
So
they
that
use.
has to do with population more than anything. I mean,
Well,
It's also, there's a lot extra that goes on outside the plant, the lift stations around
Yeah,
town
I
have to be
understand.
checked and mowed and,
I think study
there's a lot of
population is
tasks.
how large this system is in totality.
Right.
So, do we have a mile marker or something? That if under this number of miles, you have to have 4 people, under this number of miles,
I
you get
can't
then 3?
answer that, I don't, yeah.
I mean, it seems like we could build some fudge factor here.
and our engineering.
I mean, we've been working
I
with
get it.
2, and they're now saying we have to have 4. Next year, they may say we need 10.
Let's
They
hope
also
not.
said you had to do $10 million worth of improvements.
Right.
So the
It's
two
not
that are
like we
down
did the
there,
fudge.
I mean,
Shouldn't fund it.
there's constant help down there from the water crew, like she said, and then
Yeah.
the mechanics down there a lot, it's all hands on deck, so.
So are we stressed?
Well, we've been straight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an understatement.
Well, I was thinking about the fire hydrant, so.
So that's honestly the biggest reason that personnel number jumped, is 2 additional positions. So, okay.
Okay, and then on the capital improvement line, it jumped around 13,000, and that is because of the sewer bond, the phase 2B project that we have in place at this time. If on the draft budget, if you look at the other uses, 79,000 is budgeted to go out of this fund, and so 49,000 is going to sewer reserves, which is our 5% that we're supposed to be sending to our reserve account, and then 30,000 of that is going to the sewer DNR replacement fund. And, that is because our ordinance says that we should be transferring that amount each year to that fund.
Right, so in addition to our policy about funding the reserves at 25% of previous year's operating costs, our current sewer ordinances say that we have transfer a set amount to that depreciation and replacement fund for the plant every year.
And that's for the plant,
For the plant itself.
and we don't have that on the water lines.
Well, and so that's part of, again, we're starting kind of at ground zero with these depreciation and repair or replacement funds. And that's kind of the goal, is that all of your pieces like that, you would have slated out and be setting money aside towards eventual replacement.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So as you can see, for the draft budget, we're at a deficit of almost 119,000. Let's move on to DNR. Well, if you didn't wanna look at the details, have any questions on any of the line items within the detail?
Who do we pay the penalty fees to?
Is that in the revenue?
I think that's the
section?
revenues, that's the penalties that we charge.
Yeah,
Oh,
late fees and such on utility bills.
have we collected a majority of that? That was due to years past?
No, that's not for that, that's like, late payments, so they assess a fee if they don't pay by a certain date.
Let's go and move on.
Just keep going.
Okay, so we're DNR fund. Okay, we have some grant revenue and grant expenditures for this fiscal year. So year to date, we're at 260,000, we project to be around 284,000. We did, but, let's see, expenses, we anticipate ending the fiscal year with 261,000. As far as those expenses, we have the grant engineering fees, that is the Clean Water Engineering Report Grant, which is a study of our I&I evaluation.
It's a little deceiving, it calls it the clean water, but it's sewer.
And then we also have the ARPA grant phase 2, we have some expenditures coming out for that. We also have the sewer bond, some expenditures for that, and then the partial payment for the hydrovac truck. So that all happened within this budget year. So looking at the draft budget, we anticipate 2.1 million in revenues and interest coming in. A lot of that is grant revenue, about 41,000 for the I&I evaluation grant, and then about 2 million for the ARPA grant. And then expenditures, we got, we're budgeting 100,000 for in situ form. Do you wanna explain what that is?
So in situ form is when we have older sewer lines, that have root penetration or other things that have kind of cracked or fractured the lines. We go through, the company that contracts to do this, they go through, they kind of clean out, cut out the roots and the debris in the line, and then it's a new liner that goes inside, that line, and then it hardens, and then it's like having a brand new line, but we don't have to dig the whole area up for replacement, so.
And if I'm not mistaken, we are supposed to be doing so much of that each year. And we haven't been, so we definitely need to start putting that in our budget to do going forward. 62,000 for that I&I grant, engineering fees, almost 2.1, and expenditures for the sewer upgrades, the 2A grant expenses. And then, they have requested $40,000 to purchase a work truck. And I will let you explain the work truck that we're replacing.
The work truck for
DS10.
out of the sewer department was on its last leg. I think it was 20+ years old, so, basically they run a lot of water, sewer water samples down to Springfield, sometimes up to Illinois, and they need a new vehicle at this point, or even a used vehicle. I know we've talked about not being in the business of buying used vehicles, but, I'm all for whichever's the better bang for your, buck, so. But they are in need of a vehicle, and then when you add those additional personnel, it'll become even more important as they're moving around, taking care of, the lift stations and such, so.
So within the draft budget year, we have a deficit of 143,000 in that fund.
I'd like to go back to the service charges for, when McDonald went in, would that include all of their charges as well? I'm on, 20,
Okay.
and when I look at connections to the sewer and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, under charges for services?
Yeah, when you put in something like a new industry like at McDonald's, what would have been the cost for putting all the lines in there for?
I don't remember that cost off the top of my head. So most of this, is going to be actual providing the service to the customer.
Right.
So that's like,
Oh,
yeah, what they pay for their monthly rate fees.
oh.
That's
so-
what most of this is going to be.
For the most part.
I would have thought there would have been a tremendous amount of, hardware that went into, no?
I mean, they required a new transformer. We had to replace some sections of line.
No, I'm talking about just on the sewer side of it.
Right, oh, gotcha, sorry.
Some may have already been there because of the
Right.
hotel.
Yeah, it was a
For the
hotel.
most part, my understanding is the water superintendent lets them know where they're gonna need to connect into the sewer line, and it'd just be
Up to
like a
them.
homeowner.
Okay.
We go 5 feet their way, and they have to meet us with their, bolts down stuff, so.
And given the location where they put the new McDonald's, there was already all that underground infrastructure there from the hotel that was there before. So, I mean, there wasn't a lot of underground, I don't recall us doing underground.
So you have put it
They-
like
they built it up there.
Yeah, that's
They
right.
built up a lot there
Right,
versus like
right.
dug down, so.
But I mean, I don't recall our crews having to go do underground
No,
work.
I was just
It was
thinking
already
like,
there.
they probably didn't have to dig down and find those lines very much, it's all just
I
built
do know on
on.
the electric side, they did have to purchase their transformer
Right.
and their
I remember
electric line.
Did, yeah, they were supposed to reimburse us for,
Yes.
yeah, and they did, okay.
Ready? Sewer reserve accounts. Next page, I think. Okay, sewer reserves, revenues are only from bank interest and then whatever's transferred from the sewer operating fund. For the current fiscal year, we anticipate revenues to be around 4,000 instead of over. We do have budgeted transfer of 67,000 for this fiscal year to end that fund balance of 72,000. In the draft budget, we anticipate another 4,000 coming in interest revenues. And then we have 49,000 coming from the sewer operating fund, leaving us at a surplus of 53,000 for this budget year. If we go to the next slide, this is just the detail within that reserve account. We will start the fiscal year at 181,000. The revenues coming in, the 5% from sewer fund. Our 25% reserve goal is to have 244,000. We're gonna be shy that of 13,000 from meeting our goal. If we go to the next slide. Again, this is just a summary of all the sewer funds. They look pretty bad, don't lie. So based on the draft of budget, we propose to start the next fiscal year with the beginning balance. This is there on the left. And then, again, the top line is the operating fund and the replacement fund, the bottom one is the reserve account. So with the revenues, expenditures, and transfers in and out for the draft budget year, you can see we have a deficit in the sewer fund and the replacement fund. And the ending fund balances, they're pretty slim. So our options are, we don't have a whole lot of options. We can take from that reserve account to fund those, not a good idea, I wouldn't think. Somehow reduce the expenditures, I don't know where we would cut that a whole lot. A lot of this is DNR regulated, you know, all the upgrades we're having to do, the manpower they say we have to have, the replacement of in situ form, most of that's all mandated. The only other option is to look at the sewer rates and go from there. So, need your recommendation on where we go from here.
Well, when we look at a rate change there, and our rates right now, I don't have those numbers in my head right now.
Gotcha.
The rate per gallon,
8.48.
because it's all based on water consumption. Sewer rates are based on water consumption.
Yeah, it's currently $8.48 per 1,000 gallons.
With a $6 base rate.
So there's two options. The base rate can be changed.
Where is it at?
And it's in the-
Those are something I have always problems with.
Do we wanna jump to that conversation, to rates right now?
I just got one more slide if we wanna look at it
Okay.
before we
Maybe
move
we'll
on.
jump to the rate conversation. Okay. Oh, this one.
Yeah, this is just the MPUA summary that they send us. This is the, comparison April to April of this fiscal year. And it shows where we're at. It's kinda hard to see there at the bottom right. Yeah.
This is one of them. That's electric right there.
Yeah, this is just a breakdown per month on what we pay for our purchase of power.
So you'll see on the bottom here, so this is electric, so yeah, we've kinda switched utility again.
Actually, if you want to open up on my, thumb drive, cause I did find a mistake that this one is wrong, but the one I have on my thumb drive is correct. Go to the MPUA.
What do you think, John? Sorry, Waylon.
What's up, bud?
What are you thinking? You were saying, you were looking at this,
Just shows,
so I can decipher this a little bit for you.
okay.
Uh,
Slide over here.
Yeah, so looking at this, could explain this to you too if you want.
Well, okay,
This is the cost for the actual power. The
That's what I thought.
transmission is included here, so the transmission of it is an extra 0.20 cents, 0.0, yeah.
That's our transmission fees. That's what I was
Yeah,
looking for.
though, and it's transmission fees as well as things like the reserve funding and the true ups of the previous
Go
month.
ahead.
And, sorry,
nope,
You're fine.
I'll explain it to you in a bit.
So at our, I believe at our next meeting, cause, what is it, our ordinance says that if we don't make a decision, the electric rates will automatically increase or decrease by whatever the comparison is April to April this year compared to April of the previous. So as of right now, and that's April estimates, so I don't have the final numbers for us for April.
enlarge this number she's going to, yeah.
So right now, we're paying 1.8% more than last year. That's based upon the April estimates, so that could change, so. It's pretty close.
I was
to
gonna
what
say,
we
that's
paid
much
last year.
better than 4.73 on my page.
Yeah.
I was hoping
I
we'd
did
have
go through
decrease,
and,
but-
yeah, there was
Yeah.
a mistake on the calculation.
No, it's all right.
Yeah.
Is the transmission right there?
Yeah, it's
Calculated too.
Well, yeah. There's-
See how the
there's-
transmission fee jumped up from 5 point, or 5
I don't even know what we're looking.
It was
at.
5.02 to 5.59,
Right
so
there.
it's like, yeah, it's like 5 lines up there, yeah.
right there.
Yeah, so the transmission dollar per kilowatt hour jumped up.
Yeah.
That's what we pay Show Me.
Right.
Bringing power in.
Yeah, and that's a per kilowatt adjustment, so.
Right,
Talking about the adjustment.
That's a
right.
significant adjustment.
So, yeah, I mean, you'll see there's a whole lot of components that go into the makeup of our rates.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just what we pay for the purchase of the power itself. So like I said, without, a recommendation and the approval by the board for something else, this would be the auto adjustment of the rate. The increase by 1.85%. So,
And you drop your peak kilowatt hour rate, and your transmission goes up instead.
Right.
Yeah, cause the transmission rate's calculated based on your peak rate plus or multiplied by that cost. Cause like we dropped it by what, 900? Or from the couple, like 2 years ago, it was 13,800, we're now down to 12,900.
12.9, yeah, yeah.
And then they raised it to 5.59. That's the most annoying thing I've seen.
You know, without that,
That's
I was
called
hoping we
being
were looking at
held
even
hostage.
I
mild,
know,
a
so.
slight decrease, but, yeah.
But you can't build another transmission line they have yet.
We wanna move back into rate
Yep.
conversations? Okay, so, what was the house
What about generator?
Not quite, yeah, okay.
I remember this year we have a 2%. This year we have a 2%, so it's on by 3. If we lost it, if I said 0, it'd be 2, about 2. That would lose it. And then the 3.5, so about 5 that would lose. However, we are also gaining the $300,000 every year. From the transfers that are not taken from the electric fund.
Right, cause we're transferring those out, that's what the 1% is for.
Yeah, that's what we just, we don't really, even in the next year, we don't.
Are we ready?
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
Oh. Yeah.
Okay, so talking about sewer rates. So for the SRF funding that we, have applied for.
SRF is state revolving fund.
So that's for our phase 2B upgrades. That's where we are applying for a loan. We have received 2 million in grant funds because the total project is what, 4.5 million, close to it. So we have received 2 million grant funds through the SRF funding. We have applied for, CDBG grant for $750,000. We don't know yet if we will get that, but we're hoping. But they're, they sent, a template of I guess, suggested rate structure for our sewer going forward. We don't have to do what they recommend, but this is, I just wanted to show you all how they recommend we structure our rates. So at the very top, we have the estimated gallons per year. That's kind of where we're ballparking our draft budget, gallons per year. We have, 2,100 service connections. That's about how many we bill out each month. That's kind of an average over the year. And then they break out our expenses, into the minimum base rate column, and then there's a volume rate column. So they structure it as your personnel expenses, and then our revenue bond expenses to be under the base rate. And then they have everything else going to, based upon a volume rate. So based upon those calculations, they are saying that the minimum base rate should be that 1671. And then the volume rate to be 7.26 per thousand gallons.
Again, this is SRS recommended
Right.
calculation.
So based upon that, the revenues anticipated based upon the base rate would be 425,000. And then 804,000 coming from the volume rate, which is based upon the gallons. So that would bring our total revenues at 1.2 million. And then, total expenditures at, a little less than that. Bringing the surplus of 18,000 in that fund. That equates to $45, $46 per month based upon someone who uses 4,000 gallons. Right. Okay, and then you can look over on the right, this is our current rate structure that we have. Again, based upon the same estimated gallons, service connections, we have all the expenditures just kind of lumped in together. And then our base rate, our revenues that we bring in from the base rate, go down just a little bit, 153,000 is what we bring in currently. Based upon the volume rate, we bring in 900-something thousand. And then you can see our total revenues and expenditures, and then that's where our deficit is coming in at.
So these are our current rates,
Right.
our current base rate, current volume rate, these two numbers right here.
So our current, per month, average customer based upon 4,000 gallons, they're spending around $40 per month. So we can play with our current structure, we can go with SRF structure.
I'm confused on what the difference between the current and the potential.
Okay, the potential is if we play with these rates over here on the right, that you're talking the very bottom, the potential new rate, that will
You
show.
Put something different.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, gotcha,
Yeah.
cause it looks the same to me.
It does,
Like,
yeah.
It is,
I-
yeah, it is at the moment,
Right,
yes.
right.
But if you guys wanna play with any of these numbers for the base rate and the volume rate, then it'll show that difference. So it just depends if you guys wanna stick with our current rate structure. I mean, that's the first decision. Our current rate structure that shows, a $6 minimum base rate plus the volume rate, or the proposed from the state revolving fund, where they break apart those expenditures to create your base rate and your volume rate.
So if you wanted to reach the goal and you wanted to do it through a service availability fee, that service availability fee would have to become what?
If you scroll over,
If you have that many,
Scroll
the
over.
number of customers are 2,190.
actually, you can just change the base rate to whatever.
Well, what do we wanna play with?
Let's look at the base rate, even though I hate base
Put
rates.
in,
What number, what do you guys want?
And I'm just saying, in order to hit the number that you have to hit with 2,119 people, that rate would have to move to what,
I don't know,
$8?
we've gotta plug some in and see.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta, yeah,
Put in $8.
yeah, going to 12 would cover it.
12 would.
12 would cover it, that puts us 4592, gives us the $33,000 surplus.
Like, what's even? Can you go to 11? So it's probably like
That's
10.
8,000.
It's like probably like 1060 on the base rate to do it, and then you're jumping up your potential new rate to.
And how about 1075?
I mean, you're
Like if
only
we're splitting hairs.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It's just- That puts us $2,000 surplus.
Yeah, so you're looking at
Really close.
4575 versus 4467.
And that's for a $4,000 average customer.
4,000 gallons, yes.
I mean,
Here's a-
4,000 consumption, 4,000 gallons.
Here's a weird suggestion. Can we transfer from electric to, okay, never mind, can't do that. It was a
Yeah,
thought. I
we
know we
can
were dropping
borrow-
3,000.
You can borrow from another utility, but you have to pay it back.
You do have to pay it back.
So, I mean, it's.
Right,
No,
that
it
gains
isn't.
anything.
Yeah, I was thinking since we were minusing 30,000.
But we were taking money out of the electric and we were pumping it everywhere else. Can we take anything out of that general fund and pump it here?
I mean, it's not recommended, just like,
Wasn't that
just
kind
like
of the
transferring what we
philosophy
were
that
out of
got us where
electric
we
wasn't
are?
recommended, I mean.
Well, we
it's
were
not-
given that to
Well, right,
everybody.
Huh? Like a games of digging holes. Yeah. That's what I think.
How many households is that based on, where you're trying to figure out a new rate?
Is that 2,100?
And see, that's way overinflated, because, 4,000 gallons is way above what a lot of us sitting right here use. So you're way off.
That's just the recommended SRF funding they recommend.
Okay, but
An
you know,
average of
well, you're
4,000.
plugging things in and trying to figure it out, I just wonder what number it was based on, because that matters.
You know,
Not a real number.
could I say something? Would that be okay? My son had recently got, starting in January, his, water and sewer bill had just jumped incredibly high. He went from using less than 1,000 gallons a month. One bill, he used 92,000 gallons. He didn't use it, but at 92,000 gallons. The next month was 56,000 gallons. So can you imagine what that bill would be?
I mean.
Has he got an above ground pool that's
No,
about the
nothing.
size of a
Oh,
lake?
it's a little bitty house, 2 people, and, and then this last one, it's down to 24,000 gallon bill that we've got.
Does he have a metal plate over his meter?
It's
No, I mean, that's what valid.
it's a new meter, and, we've talked to the city, you know, the utility office a couple times. They came over and looked at it and said, yeah, looks like it's working right. Determined, yeah, there was a toilet bowl leaking, but I can't imagine 92,000 gallons going through a toilet.
No, you're living in a swamp with
Yeah,
that.
and, it's been checked underneath, it's dry everywhere, and, so they did send a worker over today, and I believe he replaced the meter to see if the meter was giving you some faulty readings.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, that's just,
Steve,
he would've been here tonight, but he's having to work, so I'm kinda,
if we checked the meter and it was right,
Yeah.
and then we replaced it because we didn't know what else to do, I'd like to know that.
had to pay, well, the first one.
'Cause I heard him say they checked the meter and they said it was
Are they,
right. Then today
they
we
made-
replaced it.
Like basically a loan, you pay on the first one, the second one, they did an adjustment.
Okay, that's where I was going with it.
$787 sewer, 502 water.
This is happening a lot. Okay, thank you for helping.
And they said something gone into his house and opened. I didn't think it's
201 North Cardi.
Well, we need to get back to work. All right, folks, we need to get back to the
Just got
meeting.
which it says 24,
It's usually anywhere from 5/8 to 3/4.
25,000 gallons.
But
this is.
Okay, guys.
Yeah.
We need to get back to business. Thank you.
1025. Here was the last time we
Is there
paid.
any other
They did an adjustment.
rate
then at
combinations that
6:30.
you guys on the committee want to look at? I mean,
Oh, that's.
wanna play with numbers a little differently? It's up
The
to-
address is
We're here to
201
help you guys manipulate this worksheet so we can get to something.
$10 base rate, $8 volume.
On the current.
On the
fee
current
structure?
structure, I like the current
Okay.
structure, because I know it.
So $10 base rate and what?
Wait, oh no, it's eight, go to 875.
Appreciate it. Dakota Lights, but I can give you a sheet here if you like, if it works.
Can you lower the base rate down to where we'd be about, not the
About
base rate.
6, go to 8.
Volume rate.
Yeah, lower the volume rate, to around, even.
Even?
Yeah, see if we can get to even, so just drop it to, not,
Well, I.
not to, sorry, I didn't mean 8 even, I meant like 860,
Okay.
I appreciate it.
so it's getting closer.
Eight.
Yeah.
We go 61?
Yeah, that's just.
That's fine. Right about there, I get it.
Well, but we gotta come up a little bit more.
Okay, yeah.
64.
Yeah. I mean, that's barely break even.
That, yeah.
Okay, well, getting closer. 866.
That's off at 4,000, if people are using 4,000.
Well, the calculation's based upon the estimated
Oh,
gallons
okay.
for what we expect to bring in.
Okay, oh,
It's not really based up on 4,000.
okay, thanks. Yeah, it's split in hairs, it's half dozen in one hand, and six in the other. Depending on what you do, you'd still have to come up with some way to get
I
that.
have a hard time believing that 4,000 is an average for a family.
I
Well,
don't
was
think
that-
they said that, I think they said that was a number to use for the calculation.
So, yes, so that was the number that was required that we would use when the ARPA grant was applied for.
Yeah.
That's funding the first part of the sewer plant upgrades. It required us to use that standard of 4,000 gallons per household. So, I mean, yes, that will adjust, obviously that dollar amount will be less for households that use less. I mean,
I think we're gonna have a bunch of stinking people. They're gonna stop showering.
As long as they keep flushing the toilet.
Ooh. Anyway, hello there.
There's a lot of philosophy.
We know.
I have a question. Is this basically due, cause I know the revenues are down in the sewer fund also. The revenues are down, if I'm not and the expenditures are about the same, or they're gonna go up. So this is what we're dealing with. So then, if your revenues are already down, is it because people are leaving? Is it because people are using less? What's the reason? Because do you expect the revenues to go back up?
We're not seeing a huge reduction in the number of accounts year to year.
Yeah, the number of accounts. is
So they're
fluctuating.
conserving more, with
That would be
conserving
our
more
guess.
water, conserving, yeah, okay.
Yeah, because then that follows, because water usage is down, so then sewer usage would be down, electric usage is down. So that's what our best estimate is that folks are conserving more.
Well, then I would think that the city should reduce the expenditures. How much of this budget to last budget is the expenditures gonna be going up with what's proposed? Like last year, the whole budget was up 17.5%.
Well, we're gonna have to go back to the proposed budget numbers.
Yeah.
Where are we at with collections?
So on that,
Can only collect
so our,
Well, we could get money that way.
so we don't have a new collections contract approved. We are, honestly, we're not at the point of submitting collections right now, because we're doing cleanup with recent changes in staff and utilities. We're doing some cleanup of some of those back accounts, kind of giving folks the option to make some payments, okay? I am anticipating, I can't say we're gonna get there, probably starting submitting to collections come July. Okay. So, yeah,
And didn't we say that the standard for collections was less than 20%?
of what you, yeah.
So
I
if we
don't-
have
I
a
don't
million
have that.
out, we're gonna,
Right.
we're gonna get less than 20% back.
Yeah, I don't know that number, so.
We did in the food service industry with collection agencies, it was about 18% back.
Yeah, by the time it's gone that far.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, we need to do it
Right,
because we have to come back,
absolutely.
but I don't think it's gonna be a fix.
It's not gonna bail anything out. Okay, so back to, the question was about the sewer. Okay. Where is it? The summary tab. Okay.
I mean, can we cut expenditures
Draft
without
budget
cutting
has it.
services?
I can answer it
Okay.
if you wanted to. I ran the numbers here. For the draft budget, we're looking at like the 2021, 2022 actual, about a 4% increase over that. 4.5% of what we spend more on the expenditure side. However, our projected actuals are less than that from 2022, so we actually are projecting that we're spending less than we did 2 years ago on,
Right, if you factor out the grant revenue.
yeah, factoring out all the grant revenue, I'm just looking at expenditures.
Right.
You know, so looking at expenditures, in 2021, 2022, it was, 1,091,000. The
Right,
next
that
year
number's
was,
right here on the
yeah,
screen,
975, but they probably can't see that.
Right,
22, 23 was 975,000, then $1 million almost even,
right.
projected to the end of this year. The draft budget this year so far has 1.15 million, or a 4% increase over that 2021 number. But like, you know, the draft budget for this year was, 1,054,000, and we're gonna end 50,000 less, so they saved from the budget $50,000 this year.
I mean, a 4% roughly operating increase over 3 years.
It's about right, that's
that's
pretty good.
Pretty tight.
Yeah, that's tight, considering with all the,
Exceptional.
Right.
yeah.
I mean, that's-
Inflation.
Yeah, just from inflation was
Yeah.
even worse, so.
We did half of what the
I have a
inflation
question.
is.
So
Yeah.
what part of the
Incredible.
expenditures, how much of the expenditures is new government mandates that we have to comply with? That would be a good,
What are you gonna do?
Well, how much of it, the added expenditures is what's been mandated?
I mean, you're gonna be just under half of personnel.
Yeah.
I mean, because those are gonna be new positions, so just under half of that. Honestly, so when we really get into this, moving forward, I don't know how much hits this year or it's future years, the additional operations costs, due to chemicals and stuff with the upgrades to the plants, there's additional operating costs. You know, there, plus then just the actual construction itself and our portions of the match of the bonds. I don't have a dollar number for all of that combined, but all of those are gonna be additional expenses.
Yeah, I'm just saying, you know, that contributing factor to the expenditure.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
It's like
the answer.
black cloud
Yeah.
over the sewer.
Well, I don't think we have a choice. I think we're gonna have to do something, so
Yeah.
let's make a decision. And in
Uh,
terms that we got two possibilities here.
Don't flush the toilet.
Yeah, go
Well,
back.
I've already done that. I don't
Don't
flush
flush
it for
it.
number ones, I flush it for number twos.
Now this isn't
Bring
getting
back the
set
house.
yet, right? We're not like making
No,
a
no,
recommendation.
what we will do is we'll come back next meeting.
Yeah.
Whatever you guys recommend here tonight, we'll
Yeah.
come back next meeting with those actual proposals and those numbers worked in the budget.
Yeah. I like the
I'm
COS
sorry.
current use that we have right now, and that
Well,
was 10.
I don't know that it's
10's
technically a
round
motion,
number,
but probably a vote would be good on this so that we know clearly.
And
I mean, what-
866 to make it
Okay.
even.
What do you want to do?
And this is just voting for us to present what
What do
we
you
want
want to
us
do?
to present to you next meeting.
I would move to go with the COS current structure sewer on the right side there at a $10 base rate and an $8.66 volume rate. Well,
Is there a second to that?
I second.
Motion's been made and seconded that, as shown on the screen, with the minimum base rate of $10 and the volume rate at $8.66, be proposed.
For next month's
Okay,
review.
for next month, yep. All in favor?
And you'll bring back the you'll bring back next month.
She'll
It's
bring the
for next month,
proposals, yeah. for
Yes.
next month.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried.
So just so I'm clear, so far, and, well, we haven't worked through that part, never mind, I'll be quiet for a second. Okay, ready to move on to water?
I think they said they wanted to keep water as is.
Well, that's where I was starting to go, so we wanna pull from the prior fund balance to get the water balanced, is that correct?
Yes.
Instead of
Yes.
looking at rate adjustments?
Yes.
Okay, alright, and electric,
What do you wanna do about electric?
do we let it auto adjust, you guys wanna recommend something else?
We can always do a rate adjustment later too.
You can,
However,
it makes it hard to plan the budget,
that's true.
It's true.
or we can wait and we can look at it next month when we have the actuals for April. It's up to you guys.
Yeah, I think we ought to see what our final numbers are before we move on.
Okay, let's do that. Alright. What else? That's it? Okay.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying, no adjustment necessary, was gonna be my, was gonna be a motion I was. She's wanted to do something for next week, we can do this next week. Yeah, you can always,
Names, yeah. Sorry.
yeah, that's why I was saying, what we're at, we can go with zero at the bottom line, it should still fit, however, you have to take into account Marty probably
Yes.
but this doesn't take into account another one.
We'll now take questions and comments from those in attendance.
Are you talking about this rate thing, or are you off that now?
We're off that right now.
Okay. I'd like to go back to the 3% COLA. I have a question for Mr. Payne. It sounds like you're almost saying you really do need more people. Because even if you paid me, $25,000 a year more, I might not be able to do any more work. What you're saying is they're pretty stretched at the seams. So it's almost like you're saying you need more personnel. I know they're forcing you guys to get 2 more for the sewer department, I get that. That's not a choice because of all the DNR, EPA, whatever. But perhaps you need to be looking at not giving these raises and looking at another position. From everything I hear, maybe that makes sense?
I can really tell you, I'm trying to hang on to the people that are of high quality, and, I just don't want them to walk away.
And I understand that, but realistically, what I'm saying, it sounds like, if I heard it right, maybe I didn't, and maybe nobody else heard it that way, it sounds like you need another body, or 2 or 3, I mean, I'm sure you need lots more, everybody wants more, but.
And I would entertain that. It's the fact that I'm having a hard time getting applications even for the folks the positions that we do have open. I would totally love to have another body. It's, we're trying to get a heavy equipment operator help in the water department, and we're getting people that have some experience, and so it's a whole, you're taking a gamble when you hire a new person, will they fill that shoe, those shoes that they need to, so. And then a body with benefits, a team member, sorry, with benefits is such a substantial chunk of money for the city to pay for. I'd rather just keep working with the folks I have and try to eke out, I hate to say it, but eke out more out of them. I mean, I've warmed up to my crews, and now I'm trying to work more efficiently. If that makes sense. So, because there's some downtime in there that just we need to capitalize on. So the safety pieces, all that stuff, I'm trying to work with them now that they're getting to know me, so.
And that's good, because they want a good work environment too. It's not just money,
Right.
it's
Yeah,
work
the other-
environment too.
And the other piece of that is that, you know, so we add more people, generally what we're gonna find, especially in water and wastewater, and it's that way in electric, is that finding people who already have the certifications that are required for those jobs is nearly impossible. So we gotta take somebody who doesn't have those things and train them up. And so the folks we have now, we've already spent that money to get them trained. And so
I
trying
know,
to
and
keep
your
them-
water guy left. I mean, he switched
Well,
over and he was trained, a lot of
That was,
training.
that was one, right,
Yeah.
but we don't want all the rest of them to leave too, that's part of that concern.
Sure, I
Because
understand.
we can't have a whole water crew of people who have no certifications, that's, you know, then we're out of compliance with DNR again. So
See, when
it's
Josh came here, he
Mhm.
came here from St. Robert, which he already had his Class A certification.
And I know that, and he was
But,
good at what he did.
yeah, but the other guys that we have, like James right now, that's the ones that we paid for, like, schooling and these
But
guys.
Donnie, you paid for quite a bit for him, and he switched out, unfortunately.
Yeah, he wanted to switch to.
I mean, at
different
least you
department.
didn't lose him, but,
No.
you know, yeah. Okay. Also, the 3.7 million grant for the new well and tower that you were talking about, is that the well and tower that's across from the hospital?
Yes,
Is that what you're talking about?
yes.
Is there any kind of a problem with that right now, or is everything going okay? Because you hear stuff, you know, and I know there's rumors are rampant, yada, yada, yada. So I wanna hear straight from you guys. Any problem with that at this
No.
point?
No.
Did we ever get that
No, no,
contract
no.
where, sorry, go ahead.
You go ahead.
The contract where if we have the same thing that happens out at the industrial park, they don't get any money. I mean, there's gotta be some kind of clause in there.
I get it, but, so,
This is perfect.
that to me would be more on the contractor who drills the well, maybe. I mean, the contract for the engineer is already set. So I
You're
mean,
gonna
that's,
drill the well before you put up the tower, right? I mean,
I'm not sure
we've
what
got
order
it,
that
we've
goes
got
in.
it, I mean,
That
if
would
we do
make
the same
sense.
thing, we drill a well and we hit clay and all we do is pump dirt.
Right.
That was a really bad
Right.
set of money that it was expended. I would think there would be some kind of guarantee that if we drill a well, we've gotta hit some water
Right. And I
before
don't
we
know,
build it.
I mean, not having been here during that time frame,
Yeah, I know.
I don't know, did that well pump water
No, I
good
think
in
it
the
pumped
beginning?
slop all the way through. I don't think it ever pumped water.
Okay, see,
It was-
I don't
It was
know.
always dirty water. That's why we never could use it.
You
Yeah.
see this, all this designs is, they have their own set of rules and stuff, because this all applies to the ARPA fund, so each person that they contracted out to bid for, I mean, they already know what the specifications from DNR are already at, so they had to apply, they had to abide by those guidelines, and I'm sure that there is some type of guarantee, but that's on whatever the DNR contracts through those ARPA funds that are used for this.
Well, it was a heavy expenditure. I mean, it pumped dirt, and then the tower was used only as a holding tank.
Yep.
And so we did the original drilling for the water. Why wasn't, I wonder, I mean, I don't remember anything about this, but I wonder why we continued with the rest of that project as a holding tank when we were not pumping good water.
I don't think none of those people exist here anymore, do they?
No, I don't think so.
When was it?
I don't know. I hope it wasn't when I was here.
These are questions.
I know it was here, when I was here, but I
I
don't know
could-
about this committee.
I could ask, Jeff, the lead engineer for our engineering firm, to come out and answer the next, possibly pop in and
Yeah.
answer questions about the well. I've been talking to him about the new well
Okay.
and concerns I had, and it's all factored in, so. But, if there were questions, maybe we could have him come out and speak confidently about the engineering piece on that, so.
Is that 3.7 million just for the engineering part of it, or is that to drill it and put it up?
That's everything.
That's the whole.
That's the
thing.
whole
Total
thing.
project.
Okay,
Yeah, total cost.
but right now it's still in the engineering phase.
Well, the 3.7 is the grant amount, our match is, I forgot what it was, 38,000 or
Yeah.
something. So the total project will be the 3.7 plus that would be the total project cost.
Okay. Stacy, can you get what the entire actual cost is per kilowatt hour? Power, transmission, 5% recommended franchise fee, yada, yada, yada. Cause, you know, when we talk about you pay, what is it, 0.07 cents per kilowatt hour, if that's about what it is. But then your chart had all these other fees in it, so
Are you
can we
looking
actually get what it,
on
the cost the
summary
city?
page? Is that what you're looking at?
Wherever you had it, I was taking, I couldn't see it from here, but I was taking notes on it, and you're saying there's transmission fee, there's the cost of power, you know, that you pay, and then we're charged 0.0134, about 14, close to 14 cents per kilowatt hour. Can we get what is the total cost?
Now, this won't
To the
include,
city.
what's on here though won't include like the 5% franchise for the transfer of funds.
Right, that's what I'm wondering, if you can figure all of that in. So we're talking about, what do you guys really pay? You know, the expense to the city versus what you're charging the customer.
What's the markup?
Basically, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
What's the markup?
Is that hard to figure out? I don't know, I don't
That's
know.
I don't either,
included.
but it's just like the transmission rate Kyle was just sharing with me.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
They jacked it up without any explanation, and we can't build a power line to bring it in here. So that's a variable, that's a moving target on us all the time. When I say us, I'm talking about city of Salem.
Right.
So it moves,
Yes.
it moves consistently, so
Yes.
like last month, and this isn't including the franchise fee and, something like that, but like, it was 8.3 cents per kilowatt hour is what we were.
So what was the average for last year?
That's an
What was
average.
the number? for
No,
the year?
that's for last month. The average over the year was
That's right.
7.68. Somewhere in there, I have
Yeah,
the
you have the old version.
old version.
Then what you're saying, Kyle, an average could be used for the transmission fee, because it is a changing number. Fine, do an
Yeah,
average
it's-
for
it
the
was
year
around that.
and come up with
It's
something
the
under
average
5%,
cost of the
so
the
we
all-in
know.
cost of the city.
Because right now, you know, some of us have a beef, it's pretty clear.
Sure.
You're not trying to stir, you know what?
Right.
You're just trying to get information. We're charged X amount, how much are you guys paying? What does it really cost the city with franchise fees, transmission, the whole thing? We keep saying little bits and pieces, but you never get a complete picture or number. And so, you know, it's hard to make a comparison.
Yeah, like,
Would you
like,
include-
we've been including that for about 2 years now.
I was gonna say that the rates that we set though
Yeah.
that is the all-in.
It
And
is.
I say, well, I say that because that includes our, as the proposed budget, that includes that 5% royalty fee. But it's also, the all-in for the city is also the staffing costs and the equipment
Yeah.
costs, that's all of that. And so that is what the rates are set at.
So
That's,
it's
that's
costing,
everything that
so
it takes to support the infrastructure and.
so you have to charge almost
Well,
double to
Yeah.
us per
It's-
kilowatt hour.
Well, by the time we pay, again, the royalty fee, by the time we pay staff, we pay for the equipment and everything else that goes into it, yes.
Yeah.
So why can't we get that number?
Yeah.
It's a variable.
Well, that number,
But you can
when
do
you look
average.
at the rate,
I mean,
That's what Kyle was saying, pull the average, you know, you can't get the exact.
I mean, like, we give the budget out, and I mean, like, I know there's a lot of numbers there, but it is there, like, how much it costs, and like, the only excess cost was the over-under costs, right? And we've been giving that over time, like, over-under and year-to-dates every month, our delivery, you know, and what it's been costing, and about how much we expected the budget to cost.
Too many people talking.
Well, yeah, where's the calculations?
It's a good question.
Well, but that's our all-in cost. And I guess I'm
Ask,
trying to show.
folks, we have questions that still need to be asked, please.
Alright, sorry.
Okay, how do you figure out then, like you say, there's staff that have to be paid, I understand that, there's administration, because it's a municipal
Right.
utility, I totally get that, there are going to be costs.
Right.
But then you're talking about other staff expenses. Okay, when you budget, like say for your electric department,
Okay.
is a portion of that, their pay, put under our electric fees?
A portion of whose pay?
Your your linemen, anybody in your electrical department is
Yes,
a
every
portion of
bit of
that.
it.
Every bit of it is.
Okay, so every bit of it falls under what
Of the
you're charging
electric
us.
crews pay, yes.
But then we still have to transfer all the time out of, see, I'm, okay, I'm lost.
Where does the transfer money come from?
Transfer money comes from utilities, and that's what I'm not following here. If everything was covered and you're charging us that rate, we still end up short in a lot of ways.
Okay.
I think I understand what you're getting at.
Okay.
So there is a profit that we make off of the electric fund as current because, and we budgeted it that way because our 1% sales tax and property tax were not covering our police, streets, and administrative staff, which is under the general fund.
Okay,
Not necessary, so electric and water and all that stuff, those pay for their own personnel. Like
Okay.
each separately, so all
Gotcha,
those
gotcha.
people, they aren't paid out of the general fund. Like, so, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure I'm right here, but electric personnel, our linemen are paid out of the electric fund, our water personnel are paid out of the water fund, our sewer personnel are paid out of the sewer funds.
Right,
right.
So that's why we have when we go line by line, you see personnel in the expenditures for each of those utilities. However, years ago, for the last, longer than I've been alive, cities,
Forever.
forever, the city has had for policing and for, streets and things like that, our property tax and sales tax did not cover the necessary costs of those, so we had to get those from somewhere. It is a process that most municipalities do to take from things like the electric fund and transfer it to that to cover costs of those personally.
But that should have always been paid back, like somebody else was saying earlier, when you borrow from a utility fund, state auditor said that should have always been paid back, and we've never done that.
Yeah.
We're still
If I can
a pretty big profit.
Make a correction though, Kyle,
Yeah,
cause I
yeah.
don't quite agree with how you just explained it.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah, no,
So let's get back to, because this is new terminology, the 5% royalty fee,
Mhm.
okay? That's what the city should have been doing, that or some similar method. So that the electric utility is truly paying its own way. Like I said, a private utility would have to pay that for operating in the city.
Yeah.
Okay? Instead, in the past, and I mean, I think everybody in the room's in agreement, we've been wanting to change this. In the past, the city has just done lump sum distributions, not basing that on what the royalties were, or what, it's just filling a hole in the general fund budget, okay? Every one of us have been trying to move away from that. And that's what Stacy was talking about, and it showed in the last few years how we've reduced that down from 1.2 million at one point, all the way down to what's now like 350-some thousand. That's the 5%.
Great.
So that's the 5% royalty, is the three.
All right.
That's proposed in this year for the transfer, is the 5% royalty fee, and that's it. Okay, so that does go into part of that rate structure, right? So there is no more just random transfer from utility funds to the general fund, it's the 5% period. I don't know if that helps, so it has nothing to do with trying to cover whether there's a deficit for general fund expenditures. That has nothing to do with it at this point, starting this year.
So if I understand what you're saying, right, through the budgeting process, electrical people are covered, et cetera, from electrical fund.
Right.
Personnel, whatever. And then it'll just be that 5% franchise fee now in the future is what you're trying to
It's the
get at.
transfer, yes.
To
Yes.
transfer.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that makes
Makes
sense, it's
sense.
better than it was.
Yes, you're right.
Oh,
It is
yeah.
better than it was.
Definitely.
And so, so that's what we've all been trying to work toward, getting that down where it needs to be. Does
Better
that
than-
answer your question though, Lisa?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Better than it was, the rate has not gone down yet.
Yeah, that's what, that would have been, I wondered if it would go down at some point.
Yeah, about the rate not going down?
And I think they wanted to review that next meeting so they can see what that April finalized numbers are going to be. Right now it's just estimates, and then I think they were gonna make a recommendation from that point on what to do with electric rates.
Dave, did you have I'm sorry, Stan. Did you have a question?
I'm gonna stand up because I need to.
Me too.
Sometimes there's more than one way to skin a cat. Other cities are gonna raid your skilled employees, that's the way of the world, that's what makes the world go round, you can't stop that. But if you look at the per capita rate, income rate, per capita income in the city of Salem, it's like $28,000, something like that. Doesn't really matter what those numbers are, it's not gonna make that much difference. If you calculate a $28,000 per capita income with a 2% merit bonus, that's like $46 a month before taxes. That's nothing, that's not gonna keep anybody. Not everybody likes this method, but I did when I was younger in the logistics industry, working my tail off in a large organization that, thank goodness, had the attitude of when tough times came, they cut the salaries from the top down. I liked that when I was a young employee. Not all employees, especially salaried employees, are gonna like that, and it's understandable why. But you have salaries of $85,000, $70,000, and so on in the upper ranks of salaried employees. If you take 10,000 from 85,000 and 10,000 from 70,000, that's $20,000 that you can spread out to 20 employees at $1,000 apiece. That's almost twice as much as that 2% merit raise. And it's temporary, it's not done good, it's only for the year, that is during tough times. There is more than one way to skin a cat. That's my recommendation to you folks.
I mean, you know, so if you're talking about cutting people's pay, I think that's a very different conversation.
Temporarily reducing.
Then why would you stay?
During a tough year.
Yeah, why would you stay if people are trying to recruit
If
top folks?
you hired me into your business and said, hey, I'm gonna pay you this for your skills. And then later, you're like, hey, business is going through hard times, not that I don't, you know, expect your skill level to change, but I'm gonna reduce you, why would I stay?
Well, if it's an $86,000 a year job or 71,000, I'd be saying, oh, I'm staying, I don't think you're gonna find too many
Where
around
are
here
you
like
gonna
that.
get the most manpower production?
Yeah,
You're
I would leave
gonna
my.
get it from 2 salaried employees,
You'd leave Salem then.
or you gotta get it from
Yeah.
20 employees.
That was a suggestion too that I put on Facebook, even though everybody says all I do is complain. No, it's real life, it's real suggestions. If you're making more than the median income, or say you say 30,000, 35,000 as a city employee, if you make below that, maybe they get that 3% COLA. If you're above it, no, you don't. Don't take away pay, but you don't get that. You know, you're making a darn good income. There's a lot of people who aren't. It's
And that
just
makes-
another way to skin a cat.
No, and I get that. Here's, if, we're talking economies of scale, if the city were a very large organization with hundreds of employees, then not doing COLA or merit raises at the top level garners you enough to do additional raises at the lower end. But we're not talking about hundreds of employees. We're talking about, honestly, about 54 full-time employees. And so if you cut the top folks and you eliminate their raise, it's not enough to fund the bottom level for everybody.
So it doesn't fund at all. A penny saved is a penny earned. I know nobody cares about a penny anymore, but I sure do. Especially when it's my pennies and I'm on a fixed income. Like Trina said, she's barking up the right tree, and I'm right there with you. And Sally, you've said 1/3 of our demographics are elderly or special needs and on fixed income. That's huge.
Right.
Yeah.
It's huge.
And no one's saying
You
you
have
didn't.
to think about them too, and I don't feel like they ever have a voice. Where are they? They're not here. We're here. And I'm not talking about me. I can afford to live in this city. But you know what? There's a lot of people who are struggling so bad, and they're good people, and some of them have been here a long time.
Yeah, no one's arguing that point.
Okay,
But
but
we
then,
still have to put together a budget that retains our skilled people who are qualified to do the jobs.
2%'s not gonna do that.
Well, 0 certainly isn't. So,
you lost quite
Well,
a few
maybe-
people who were skilled.
Maybe
They
not
left.
do the merit and just do the COLA, or reduce the COLA to 2.5%. How much would you save?
well, I can
I
tell
don't
you
know.
right now, you know,
50,000.
Steve talking about trying to keep his folks, we eliminate merit, so we eliminate their ability to climb that ladder and the steps of pay, then, yeah, that,
I worked 49 years and never got a merit increase.
Well,
It was never offered.
gotcha.
This is the first time I've ever heard about a merit increase.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, really. And this was a professional,
Okay.
you know, so,
I mean, every organization, every business structures their pay scale differently.
yeah. And I never got above a 2.9% in 47 years. That's all it was. And these were not small organizations, but they weren't huge. So you could always reduce the COLA.
And that's skilled. She was a nurse. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe she won't say it, but I'm very grateful for those nurses.
This is a reality. You need to look at the organization chart and see the vast differences between up here and down here, and where most of your man hours in production is coming from.
Well, my comment nobody's gonna like, so I'm gonna throw it out there.
I'll join you, John.
I think there's, I can remember as an educator for 40 years that, we got sometimes a $25 raise for a year. And I bought my first car in
And they stayed.
62,
Yeah.
and that car
They had a
was
job, they stayed.
it was, 34,000, and I was making 34,000, or 36,000, my car cost 34. At the end of my 40th year, I was making 36,800 and some dollars. And I was not working any 8-hour days. I was working closer to 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-hour days. And that car would have cost me about the same amount it did 40 years earlier. So I had to constantly make adjustments in my life. Recently, I got rid of my Coke habit. I've had a very serious Coke habit. Yeah. It was called Coca-Cola. So on January 1, I stopped drinking soda. And that saved me, you know, it's $1.50 2 or 3 times a day. Well,
Did you tighten your
so there are things that I had to do to tighten my own budget. And I think there's just some things that we all make adjustments personally in order to try to hit our budget lines.
And that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, but you're talking about it from a different level too. I mean, when I look at the amount of money I spent, trying to educate myself, that was a tremendous amount of dollars. And that my parents didn't do. I mean, that was something that I started working when I was 9 years old, shoveling shit out of a stable. And it's just, it cost a lot of dollars to get an education.
And I bet you paid back your own loans too, didn't you, John? Just
No,
like some of us.
actually, I was able to save enough that I was my father, I always hated what he did, but I guess, in retrospect, it was quite good. I had to pay rent, not rent, I guess, I paid a fee. If I made $3 on a loop for caddying, I got the tip, he got the $2. But he put it away for me, and, it was used for my education. I think for getting education, first, I don't know what Sally's education is, but I don't think it was cheap in terms of getting it. I think they do deserve a little bit more than a person that's, not doing anything. I mean, I look at my block alone, and there's a number of people that are of an age that could work, and they're not working. But they smoke, and they drink, and they've got plenty of money to do a lot of things that I don't do in order to make ends meet.
They don't draw a salary from the city either.
So I-
84,000.
Ma'am, I didn't hear.
I said they don't draw a salary from the city for 85,000.
They
I
don't put
don't
into
know
the
what the
coffers
people
either,
in the
because they
city
aren't
draw.
working.
I don't think we have many people that are working in water, sewer, and electric that are pulling 85,000.
I think there might be places to cut, but I think we're arguing over split hairs here. It's $100,000 over the average of the employees, and that's 0.5% of our city budget. And if we're looking at 0.5%,
But
and we're thinking about
100,000
losing, but we're looking to lose people, or at least make them disgruntled with their working environment over 0.5% of the city budget.
There's always gonna be other people to step into those
There
positions.
isn't.
I don't think there is.
Yes, there will.
I don't think
Yeah.
you're hearing me
That's
when I
okay.
say we're
I'm-
not
I'm
getting
not-
applications.
I'm just saying, this is,
Then we are too.
Mr.
many
Payne, it's a
applications
two-way
do we get
street.
I think we're getting off.
I don't,
If you
I'm
don't
just
mind.
trying to.
Catherine,
I don't even.
you wanna take
The
control?
labor force is just gone down,
Since I got here.
and the demand is up here, you gotta pay them.
Folks, we need to move on. We've been here almost 3 hours.
Yes.
I'm ready to go home.
And,
But thanks for
Email
your
your
concerns. I
alderman.
mean, we try to listen, but also, we have, what did I interrupt you?
John, we're trying to adjourn here, John.
Oh, all right.
We don't be here
You
tonight.
go right ahead, you're entitled, you pay for it.
okay, folks, is
Bye.
there a motion that we adjourn this meeting?
First and second, third and fourth.
All in favor?
Yes.
Go home, get some rest, go to McDonald's, have a Sunday.
Janitor too.